Yeah, that wasn't.
No, that
wasn't a fun
gnarly.
one. That was not the fun one. Bring this like right up.
Right up.
Yeah, about a fist. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
going to hear your voice back in it.
Yeah. No, it's cool.
No, it's good level.
Yeah, yours and we had Wind down obviously recently. Chatting to him, I mean, totally different level of crash, but standing on the finish line there at Lenzerheide when he went down, I was like, oh man, that was just sickening.
Yeah, when you see like the whack, like the actual just.
Yeah,
oh,
and
man.
that last drop was gross. I mean, we were saying it to the
he
ESO guys when we were there, just that shitty steep landing with no transition. So if you go slightly over it, it's just like, yeah, not cool.
Do you always look at tracks and like you realize
You're picking holes and
you're
everything.
like, oh man, this could be so much better.
Yeah.
But it could though.
Yeah, totally. That's it, right?
Like I always go to World Cup tracks now and you see how they've done some stuff. Like I was walking Leger when they were building it and they were building a corner like in a 90-degree angle and you can just see it's like
It's just not going to work.
This isn't the one, but what do? Like you just you can't really just be like, oh mate, I kind of wanted to because he knew who I was and I was walking the track this is weeks early and they're building it and I was like, man, come on, like you could just a bit more round or a bit more this, a bit more that. But anyway, we'll jump in. Simon French, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's been a while. I've been chatting for a bit, trying to make. I know at Maydena when I was there last, I wanted to chat to you and chat to Reese and everyone to see how it was going, but we finally got you up here. I'm going to say you didn't come up here just to do the podcast as much as I'd like to, but why exactly are you up here? Are you still doing the Sunny Coast project, and is this something you want to do in Gold Coast as well?
Yeah, look, I was up in Brisbane, basically. We left our car there. So we have a house up on the sunny coast. So I got a couple of things to do up here. Stopped in Sydney on the way up for a site visit there and cruised up and enjoy a bit of sunshine. But yeah, normally there's work and play in almost every trip. So hopefully I get a wave while I'm up here.
Do you surf a bit?
I'm hopeless at it. But yeah, I try.
You try.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. Just not a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm the same. Do you feel like you're over the hump though? Of like, when you're learning? No, you're not quite over the hump.
I'm well back from that hump. I surfed heaps as a teenager, so I can surf, but it's one of those things, as you know, like you can't stop surfing for a few years and then just get back on and expect to be the same. It's kind of not like riding a bike.
No.
So I'm slowly kind of getting back into it. My kids are getting into it, so it's motivating me a bit to start getting back into it.
Does that push you when you see them? They're just like killing it and you're like, okay, I need to...
Well, they're just getting started, but I figure like they're gonna leave me behind if I don't get on board with them, and they enjoy it, so it's cool.
And kids pick up stuff so much quicker.
Oh, dude,
and they can bounce.
It's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
When you were talking before about like the young kids, and you see how quickly they pick up and go, and you're just like, oh man, you need to.
Oh, it's wild. I was only chatting to someone last night about just my little fella. He's 7 and he's starting to learn to jump properly, like legit jumps. And saying I haven't jumped, say, crabapple at Whistler for a couple of years. I just don't really feel the need to. I still probably could easily enough, but scary. But now Max is going to probably jump those in a year or so. And I'm like, oh, jeez, now I'm going to have to get back into it.
Just go back and show how it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
It's humbling though, isn't it? When you see someone
dude, yeah, for sure.
Step out and go, oh my God, we'll actually start pushing this. And you go like, because I guess that's the point. When do you go, okay, pass the torch on? That's you now. That's not me anymore.
Yeah, I've said to him, look, give me till you're 12. I want to be able to keep up until you're 12. But he's just like a rocket ship. His progression, it's wild. So
how old is he now?
He's 7. But I mean, he rides Maydena double blacks, so he's a legit rider.
Yeah. I was watching one of my mates coaches BMX, and he was showing me like 7-year-olds doing like triple tail whips and like double backflips, and it's just
BMX kids, yeah,
man.
Yeah, like, it's mental.
I watched that and I'm like you can have that.
Totally.
And and I asked him, I was like, yeah, how old is this kid? And I think, oh, this one's 7, this one's 8. And they'll come into the coaching session, like, can we do backflips today? And it's like, dude, you're 7, like just chill. But
yeah, well, Max wants to do it. I'm like, dude, you're gonna have to, like, Reese is gonna help him out, learning some flips on the tramp and kind of progressing up to it. But he's really good. Like, he's great at just figuring things out and gradually progressing. He almost never crashes. He's just really dialed and calculated. And when he commits to something, it's done. Like, he doesn't hesitate. He just does it.
He goes for it.
It's really cool.
How's that feeling watching that? Because I haven't fully experienced that thing of you want to push them, but you're also just like, oh, how...
Yeah, it's interesting, hey. Like, I feel like it's really important to teach your kids how to deal with risk and, make good decisions. And like a good example is probably the container, like the big container feature up on Freight Train in Whistler.
Yeah.
So Max did that at 6, like not the last trip we went to Whistler, but the one previous.
Yeah.
And he was dead set on doing this feature. He's like, we weren't leaving Whistler until Max had done the container. So we kind of worked on it. We got speed towing in and we got him dialed, but I knew he could do it. And I said to him, like, I know you can do it, dude, but it's entirely up to you. There's no pressure. If you want to do it, you've got the skills. You just got to, and we talked through it all and we worked it all out and we broke it down into like, get on the container, stop, get on the container, stop, and then off you go. But you still worry. It's like if he hesitates off the lip, which he never does, but still he's tiny. And if he sends off that thing at 40 Ks an hour or whatever, he's going to ragdoll. So it's stressful, but it's so cool when they nail it. It really is.
Yeah, that mindset of watching and like giving that right advice. So yeah, man.
And then you just got to let go. It's like I've kind of worked through with him to get to that point, and then you're like, it's all you now. Like you go, you do it, and I know you can do it, but it still scares the shit out of me. Like, it really does.
Do you reckon you get more nervous him doing stuff now than you doing stuff, even when
100%.
No matter how sketchy it is?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're your kids. You don't want them to get hurt, but equally, like you see that elation and joy they get from nailing something that they've wanted to do for ages, and you know what it's like as a rider. It's so cool. Like you can't beat that feeling.
Yeah, when you really just nail it, getting that kind of flow state feeling. And
you're like, exactly. Yeah, it's a pretty special place, and to have the ability to get your kids into that space at such a young age is super cool.
I was going to ask you as well, how did you actually get, because someone said, did you used to be a nurse?
Yeah. So I nursed for 7 years, I think, in the end.
Yeah,
I worked in oncology, so cancer nursing. So basically I worked most of the weekends, and then I would do trail building stuff during the week, essentially.
Was that a pretty heavy job to see people in that kind of state, and that, like, because obviously you'd probably see a lot of people end their life kind of.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I sat with dozens of people while they died. It's pretty heavy. Look, honestly though, like you get so much from it as a human. Like it teaches you that raw humanity that you probably don't get anywhere else. So you learn to deal with people at a level that you just wouldn't get in everyday life. So yeah, I really treasure that time. It was gnarly, and I fully respect the crew that are still there doing it. In the end, there were other things for me to move on to, but it was cool. It was really cool.
Did it give you a different perspective on death? Like understanding that, like, it would be more present in your life every day or every few weeks.
That's the key, right? Like you'd learn to, well, for me anyway, maybe not for everyone working there, but you learn this absolute respect for the life you've got and the time you've got. I mean, probably to me a little bit too far. Like I'm a little bit obsessive and just crazily trying to cram everything in, but you definitely learn not to waste it. That's probably the key thing. It's like you see people, and young people too, that are at that point where they don't have time left, and you're like, well, shit, like I don't want to waste the time that I've got. This poor person's got days, and I've hopefully got, years and years and years ahead of me, but you don't want to be there at that point and go, geez, I left so much on the table. That's the thing.
And you just don't know, hey.
No, like totally.
That's the biggest thing, and you've got no clue.
Nope. No, none of us do. That's the thing. So look, it's heavy, but it really gives you a good concept and grasp of, making the most of things.
I felt that when obviously I had that big crash recently.
Yeah.
And when I was just laying there on the ground, I was like, I just thought about all these things I'd never be able to do again.
Yeah. Like that was so heavy. As I was saying to you before, like you watch, and I'm a super fan, right? I watch all the World Cup footage from everyone, ESO, the whole thing. And that's one of the heaviest crashes I've seen. One of those ones that just makes you feel sick. You're like, oh.
Just the fact of where I got stuck as well.
Yeah.
Like that position, I think that was the scariest part. Because like I couldn't breathe properly because my legs are pulling down on my lungs. So I'm in this position, and I've never felt that before. Just like full body's just gone. Yeah. It's like there's nothing there.
And you couldn't move for a bit there, right? Like
I couldn't move at all. Yeah. 10 minutes, no feeling, no movement. That's when I was going through the whole, we don't have, like, you don't know how much time you've got.
Yeah.
Like you said that when you see people dying, it's like tomorrow. Because obviously I wasn't dead, but imagine all the things like I'd never, like I was like never going to have sex again, never going to feel what a person feels like in that way, never going to
ride my bike.
Not going to ride my bike, not going to travel, not going to be able to like go upstairs, like just like all that's just going a million miles.
Yeah, no, that's gnarly.
And oh man. But one really cool thing I will say though is when I wasn't in that really super negative loop, I would just be like, okay, what can I focus on that's going to bring some happiness into this moment?
Yeah.
And just like real little things like the sun on my skin, leaves going in like the wind. And I got so present in those little moments of feelings. Like I can feel it now.
And it's cool that you can find that like that.
In that
state. It's pretty wild. Yeah.
I feel like I was joking about this might sound super weird, but people say they manifest things.
Yeah.
I did a podcast, this is ages ago, and I've said it for a while, because I was always really scared that one day I could paralyze myself in
Well, that's
downhill.
like almost the ultimate fear, right?
I think, that's like lose
Yeah.
it. But that was something I consciously thought about when I would race. And then I remember I had this mind shift where I thought about it. And I was like, well, at least if it happened, I'd have more time to focus on the podcast. So I was like, that could be a positive that could
you
come.
found something out
Something.
of it.
I'd be like, okay, well, this door's shut, this window's open.
Yep.
So I openly said that on a podcast, and then right at the end of my career, when it's about to finish, I almost paralyzed myself, and then put more effort into the podcast.
Yeah.
It's such a weird.
Yeah. Life's weird, man. It really is.
I thought about that the other day. I was like, I fully wrote this out and saw it. But I was going to ask, how did you go from, nursing and obviously giving this perspective on life and shit, I need to do something. And then you went, B zone, we're going to go build trails, start dirt art, start Maydena. Like, what was the steps from that to that?
Yeah, I mean, probably multiple steps. Same with most things in life, I suppose. But yeah, look, I started building trails more formally back in 2005. So we were involved and built the Glenorchy downhill course that ran a few national series rounds, just as volunteers. Like, we just loved it. We were always building trails as kids. So we did that, and then a bunch of councils started kind of reaching out to me locally to say, hey, can you help out with this? Can you help out with this? We need you to come and give us some advice on this. And it's like, well, shit, now I have to get insurance, and now I have to, kind of formalize this thing, or I can't work with these guys. And you kind of just start that treadmill, and then all of a sudden it just kind of keeps going and going and going. And eventually, like, we've got about 75 guys on the trail building crew now, and teams just everywhere. We do a heap of massive walking trail stuff too. So it just snowballs. Like, it was one of those things, probably luck too, like right time, right place, I suppose. The industry has kind of just kept going and going and going, and particularly over COVID, there's been that big boom. So it's just kind of kept growing. And there was a point about, as I said, 7 or so years into nursing where I'd literally pushed about as hard as I could in terms of my rostering and everything else. And I just kept winding my hours back and back and back. And I was working like 7 days a week, every week, like, big hours too. And you get to a point, you're like, this is silly. Like, what am I doing with this nursing thing? Like, it's not really where I want to be. It's been great. It's got me to where I need to be. And having that flexibility with rostering and things was great. But I just got to a point and I was like, I just need to leave. And then I just jumped off the edge and away we went. And
was there a moment when you were just like, today's the day? Like, was there a tipping point or something that you kind of felt and you're like, all right?
There was no catalyst for it, really. Like, there was no one event where I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, this is it. I've had enough. It was more just a gradual point of reaching it and saying, look, I don't need to do this anymore. Like, I can focus on my own stuff, and I'm at a point where I think I can sustain it. And look, to be honest, the bike park was kind of similar thing. Like, we'd sort of worked on the planning, and you get to a point where you've put so much time, energy and money into it, and you're like, I'm either going to turn left and forget about it and just always wonder about what would have happened, or turn right and just send it off and hope for the best. So there's been a few moments like that in my life where you just got to make a decision, and it's kind of one of those all-in decisions that I don't really have a plan B. I think for me personally, it's like, I'm not going to fall on my face and never get up again, but I've never really wanted to have this, if that doesn't quite work, I'll do this or that, or it's like, I'm just going to do this and do it.
I think plan Bs destroy plan As.
Yeah, totally. It just erodes it away because you're not fully focused on it. You've always got something to, and look, I guess I always did have something to fall back on, but I let my nursing registration lapse, and it was another one of those ones where I was like, I'm never going to go back to do the re-entry bullshit that you have to do. Like, yeah, I'll still do a bit of medical stuff here and there, like around the bike park and things, but that chapter's closed, I think, for me.
I think, like you said there, you got these two things, and one's pulling you into it and the other one's kind of there still. And I think so many people get caught on that. Oh, but I've always done this, so I'm good at this, or this is whatever. Yeah. But then their actual thing they're passionate about is just
you fall into the trap, hey. And I see it with a lot of people, and I try and, I guess, impart some of my experience now and then to people when they ask. But you see so many people at the end of their career, and they're pretty miserable about it. They're like, look, work's work, right? Like, I've turned up 7 or 5 days a week for 40 years of my career, and it hasn't been terrible. I haven't suffered, but there's no meaning for them in their work. And to me, like, that's that whole work-life balance thing. Like, to me, there is no work-life balance. It's just life. Yeah. Like, it's all life for me. And like, even saying coming up here and it's like, yeah, I've got a whole bunch of work stuff going on, but I'm still living my life. Like there's still plenty happening. So I think it's important for me anyway, personally, that, you know, you get to the end of whatever your career might be. And it's like, I've actually done something. Like I've left some kind of mark, and I feel like I've achieved something, and I've enjoyed it. So yeah, to me, work's not work. It's just life.
And you get to create so much when you're doing that work as well. But I said this the other day, where it's like, if you're not doing that thing that you love, like it's dangerous. And I compared dangerous to, like, I obviously hurt myself because I wasn't fully committed to that thing. And even though it's a cool thing, like nursing would have had its fulfillment. It would have had really good moments, but it wasn't like feeding your soul.
Yeah, and look, it was for a while, for sure. Like it definitely was for a while.
Same with racing as well.
But you got to realize that, you know, the sun's going to set on it at some point. And I think people often fall into that trap of like, hey, I'm making really good money. I'm working my way up the food chain in whatever career I'm in. But eventually, a lot of people start to get over it, and you start to get shitty, and, you know, you can just hang on too long. So like, oh, I've got a mortgage and I've got kids and I've got this reliable income. It's like, that's great. But if you're not happy, then what's the point at the end of the day?
I fully agree with that. You get trapped in this mindset. It's like, I need this to obtain this.
Yeah. And I guess for you, like as a racer, it's almost harder again. Like that's sort of built into your personality and your, you know, who you are, your identity and everything else. Like, not saying you're leaving it behind. Like I know you've got some really cool plans, but that must be hard, right? Like to make that transition.
I guess in a way, but I felt like I went through this when COVID happened. I felt
True.
like
Yeah.
COVID was like the kind of the catalyst to this, actually.
Yep.
Because I had the best season of my life in 2019, finished top 10 in the overall, which was like a goal as a kid. Like top 10's is like, man, you're top 10 in the world. That's epic. So I had that, and I knew I could, like I was improving, like I was going in the right direction. And then COVID happened. Forced retirement, have to stay home.
Yeah.
Can't race. Like I felt pretty lost for a little bit there.
Just
I was
lose
like,
that momentum, right?
yeah, well, it's like who you are is so imprinted in this.
Yeah.
But that's when I went through that feeling of who am I and retirement and all that. And then it's funny because have you heard Tony Robbins say, if you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
when that happened, it created all these other boats.
Yeah.
And it's like winning the downhill World Cup was like the island.
Yeah. And there's always a boat, or you
There's always,
swim, right?
Yeah. There's something, that's going to draw you away from it. And I think COVID just brought all these things into place. And then I was like, okay, accepted it, was all good with it. But then after that, I've never was able to race to that ability.
Yeah.
Like from 2019 and then until now, I just was, you know, when you're doing something because you're like, I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And someone wants to pay me to do it. And I don't hate it. Like, it's not like this is the worst job in the world, but I don't love it anymore. So I'm not going to push that.
It's like the dream job for most people who love their riding. Not everyone, you know, but like to give that up is surely pretty hard when you're still there, but maybe not there in your, you know, your motivation.
Yeah, I just knew I wasn't there because my heart wasn't in it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I know how hard you have to push
Yeah.
to be where those guys are, and I just stopped wanting to push that.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not worth, the risk isn't worth the reward. I said to someone, like the highs are not that high and the lows are really low.
Yeah, and it's not, the juice is not worth the squeeze. And the standard now is insane.
Oh, it's
like,
crazy,
it's
man.
mental. Like 10 years ago, you could probably be that guy or that girl and you could still hang there and, you know, get top 10s.
Yeah.
But not now.
Me and Connor always joked about it. We're like, man, you could have like a semi-decent run, make a mistake and still get top 20 pretty easy.
Yeah.
And now it's like, if you're not perfect, you're probably not even going to qualify.
Yeah, well, back when I was racing as a junior, like I won a national champs without even training. Like we just didn't train. Like it wasn't a thing. And then you had, like, I was in that Sam Hill era. Rennie was like a little bit older than me. Like that crew, like they all started training eventually. But when we were racing Aussie Nats and things, like we weren't doing much training. We were just having fun.
Well, in saying that, do you think the way it's going in the professionalness, how it's becoming more professional and more money and less riders and more like all that, good or bad? Like, what do you think? And like, what do you think is good?
Yeah, I got lots of opinions on that one. I think
I'll share and get in town because I do as well, and I get hassled. That's one good thing about like stepping away from it and actually just being like having an opinion and not having like backlash. Like, dude, when I joked about the cross and downhill's dead, people like riders went off at me, like fully went off at me.
Yeah, right.
And then I had arguments with them.
Yeah,
and explaining why I think this. And I was like, watch the video because you haven't even seen the video we're going to put out.
Yeah.
And at the start, I'm like, downhill isn't dead. Like that's the first sentence I say.
Yeah,
but he's like,
yeah.
you think it's dead and all this stuff. I'm like, no, man, you don't get it.
No, look, I got mixed view. I mean, I see the back end of it and the organisational side. Like obviously we hosted a World Cup earlier in the year and we worked pretty closely with Chris Ball and his team. And I know a bunch of that crew anyway. So I definitely get that kind of picture from behind the scenes a little bit. And I do think there is some value in, or a lot of value in where they're trying to take the sport. I think the end goal is valid. Maybe not perfect, but I think it's valid. But I guess my concern is there's such a huge gap between where we are now and where they want to get the sport. And then the argument too is like, do we want to have downhill athletes being Formula One level athletes? Like there's a whole box and dice that comes with that. Like, yeah, there's a shitload more money, but do we lose the soul of the sport along the way? And then there's the more, I guess, venue side of things. Like we obviously operate a big venue. We want to host future World Cups. There's a massive cost now associated with the broadcast that comes back onto the venue. And we do it generally as a marketing exercise at the end of the day. Like that's the value from a venue point of view and just because it's fucking cool. Like we love doing it. I love events, always loved events. Like we want to do that stuff because it's just super fun to do and we feel like it's valuable. We can make a contribution to the sport, but it's hard now. A lot of the smaller venues I think are going to get squeezed out and you're going to see these big venues that have big dollars, big government behind them. I mean, you even see it a bit in Australia, to be honest. Like,
do you get grants and stuff to host it?
Yeah, we do. But I guess we have a small government. So to put it in perspective, to host a Enduro World Cup, several $100,000 in outgoings, and you don't bring a fraction of that in. Like there's no way you could just pop up a bike park and go, hey, I'm going to host an Enduro World Cup and fund it yourself. Like it just doesn't happen. No one can do that. You're looking at the big resorts and things. So government support is critical and they look at it and they go, well, look, you're going to bring X amount of people in and you do your whole economic impact analysis and you get used to kind of knowing what they want to see from a grants point of view. So that's a huge part of it. But if we go to the government and say, hey, we need millions of dollars to host a World Cup, the value proposition's not there. So I guess on one side, I worry that you're going to lose some of those core kind of rider-focused venues like us, where we're still working towards it. Like hopefully we can figure it out. But it's hard from a financial point of view.
How much more are they asking? Not how much are they asking me, how much more are they asking for than they used to? Or you can tell me how much, it's up to you. I don't know if that's information.
Yeah, I don't have the exact figures. Like I was in New Zealand the other week. We're trying to kind of work out a bit of a thing where New Zealand hosts a World Cup, we host a World Cup, we kind of kick off the series. So we're doing a bit of work in that space. It costs a lot. Like it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a lot more than that.
But would it be like just from going off last year to now? Just say, is it double or is it not quite double? Or
yeah, probably double. But I don't like. We haven't got to that point in our discussions with Warner Brothers about exactly what it's going to look like.
You just know it's gone up a lot.
It's gone up a lot. Yeah, it's definitely gone up a lot. And look, the broadcast is good. The commentary is a whole other piece. Like, I don't know whether you want to open that can of worms, but
no, go to town.
Yeah.
go to town.
Oh, look, honestly, I think Rick did a good job. Like, I think he did pretty good. I think when Gwyn was involved, it was awesome. Cedric, not so much. Sorry, Cedric, but for me, it just didn't really work.
It's hard to have a French person that speaks French
commentate
for an English audience. It's just I find that because I really like Cedric, I get along with him really well, but it's like the commentary
and he's a legend. Yeah, but I just don't think he didn't do it for me. When you've got guys like Carlso, who I think would be great, Win Masters, who would be great, there's a bunch of the women that would be great. Like I just feel like we could do better in that space. I think what they're doing is awesome, but probably one of the key things is if they want to cull the fields right down, which I'm not totally averse to. Like I love the idea of the scrappy van life side of things and getting into the World Cup, and so many of our Maydena crew are doing that, and it's sick. I think it's amazing. But if you want to cull those fields down and squeeze those guys and girls out, we need a really good feeder series, and that's one of the things that we're trying to work on down here. Like in Europe, you've got the IXS Cup, which is a pretty big series and acts as sort of a de facto feeder series into the World Cup, which is awesome. But we got nothing down here. You've got Oz Cycling trying to piece together this national series. They're not really doing it properly. They're not really working with the venues properly. I don't know. I feel like at a national level we're struggling, and that's where, again, we're in New Zealand trying to figure out, like, what can we do? Can we build this continental series in Australia? Can we have 2 rounds, 1 in each country, UCI points on all the rounds, and that's your feeder series then into the World Cup? So that's one of the other things that we're working on, because I
Would
think
you link it into like a Crankworks, or would that be
maybe
you want to be separate?
I think separate. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it could overlap other events. It might overlap things we're doing. Maybe it overlaps Cannonball. I don't know. I mean, we're just kind of throwing ideas around at the moment, trying to get some support from venues and the organisations over there to come back and say, well, look, we've got this idea, and then take that to Warner Brothers and say, look, this has got to happen. Like for Aussie juniors, we need something here to give these guys and girls a pathway into the World Cup. And if you're going to make it harder and harder for them to get in, how do they get in? Like if you look at the results this year, you still had a bunch of arguably random people that were way up there and unexpected, like Charlie Hutton winning world champs. Yeah. Amazing. Like, yeah, a bunch of people probably expected it. I sure as shit didn't. But then you had a bunch of other athletes that are creeping up into the top 10 that otherwise wouldn't have even made the cut of the top 20 because they made that rapid progression up through the ranks.
Well, look at Ollie Davis for perfect
That's it.
example.
Ollie's a great example.
He didn't even qualify for the first 2 rounds, and then it was obviously a slow burn to get where he is now. And then at the end of the year,
15th or something, I can't remember, but he was up there.
I think he got a top 10 he got a top 20 at Worlds, and then I think he got a top 10 at Ludon VL.
Yep.
Maybe just outside at Leger. Like he's just bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, we did well now. We know what to do, and then just keep doing it.
Yeah, I think honestly the sport's in a really good place. I think is what I firmly believe. Obviously, the industry's got its own struggles at the moment, but that's all going to work itself through the system at some point. But the sport's in an amazing place. More people are riding than ever before. There's so much interest in racing. I just feel like there's a few missing pieces. And maybe one of the other big things with the whole Warner Brothers change is just the communication. Like what we hear a lot from the riders, and look from a venue point of view as well. It's like, just talk to us more. Like, start talking to us about what you want out of a venue. Like, what can we do to support what you're trying to do? Like, can we provide that feeder series? What do you want from us from a World Cup? Like, what can we do to improve the World Cup for you? Like, I feel like when we hosted it down in Maydena, we threw the kitchen sink at that thing. Like, we built a full downhill style finish bowl. Like, we had a big party bar on the hill. Like, we had a guided spectator ride. Like, we just came up with a whole bunch of ideas, and we're like, we're just going to do this shit. And then the guys come down and they're like, this is awesome. Like, we haven't seen an event like this before for enduro. Like, it's more like a downhill race. It's really got that atmosphere. And they did the reseeding of the last round, the last stage, which I think was awesome. Like, you had your top
hype,
30, you've got the hype. And then if you could eventually broadcast that, like, that enduro space is obviously what suffered this year. And that's what we're looking at in 2025 is like tentatively looking at an enduro World Cup. But I mean, what's enduro even going to be doing in 2025? Like, it was a pretty flat year, and then next year looks even worse. It's just Europe, right?
You know what I feel like this could save that? Why don't you just televise the last stage?
That's it. And that's what I said to Chris and the guys the other day. I was like, just
that's televise. A product.
Exactly. It's like a downhill race then.
Yeah, then you got a downhill race on last stage.
Yep.
You've just got 7 or 8 minutes. It's like
it would be
coming in before it.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that's it. You've got the same, maybe you got a couple more cameras, or you just get over it. You don't televise the whole thing. Like, they're so stressed about televising every meter of the course, which is cool.
But it's so much more work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why don't you just make this little thing, trial that? That would give so much more like value. Because what are you buying in an enduro race? Is like, you don't see anything.
Exactly.
The pits are dead. Like,
you look at, I think it was Leo Gang, where Reece Werner, chatting to him and the team, like, he won his first Enduro World Cup on a Thursday at 8:30 at night, and there's no one there. It's like, dude, that sucks. Like, that really sucks. There should have been thousands of people there, like, celebrating that with you. But instead, like, you rode out to buttfuck nowhere for 3 hours in the morning. No one saw you all day. And then you come back at night and everyone's gone home to bed. Like, that's so hard. That doesn't work.
I don't understand why they ran them at 8 o'clock for one, and why they ran them on the Thursday. Look, I don't get it. Like, where's the...
I think the idea is not, like, it is merit in trying to bring them together, but it didn't work this year. Not from an outsider's perspective who's looking at it from a broadcast point of view. It's like, the downhill is going to take the attention for the time being because it's got the broadcast. It is, cliche, but the Formula One of the sport. But enduro is sick, and those guys and girls are such talented riders. Like, if we could televise that stage 5 or 6 or whatever it is for that event, amazing. Be so good for the sport.
And when they came, just because you could run them, just say Leo Gang, do it again. why didn't they just run them so they came down after the downhill qualifying, at least on the same day?
Yeah.
So then a crowd's
So you've got
there.
a crowd.
You've got
Yeah.
a crowd. You've got people there. You can still run at 8 o'clock, which I wouldn't recommend. But if that was, there's no other option.
But you need the crowd. And this is what we really tried to pull together. And we're doing it with the Hardline event. But with the Enduro World Cup, it's like the crowd makes the event in many ways. Like, you can dial the course, your venue's sorted. But if you've got thousands of people there screaming along the side of the course, like that's a whole other level. Like you look at the big events, like Leger in France is just renowned for the crowd, right? And I don't know, maybe it's off-putting as a racer, but...
Oh, no, I love it, man. I think it's great. When you can't hear anything, literally nothing besides just that white noise of people screaming, it puts you in the zone.
Like I think it was stage 4 in that Maydena World Cup. We had the DJ there. We had the stage
Stoke Wizard.
The Stoke
Shout
Wizard.
out Stoke Wizard.
And there's like hundreds of people screaming. And I was there for Dan Booker, obviously local hero. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, I hope we haven't ruined this for him. Like it's pretty full on. But no, the crew loved it by and large, but it was very loud. It was mental.
I saw some footage and I was like, this is epic. I was just talking to Richard the other day, Stoke Wizard. He said you put him on again to do Hardline.
Yeah.
Like, man, you need to build an experience for someone. Like okay, sweet, you've got a race. Everyone can have races, but what's the experience you're building? Like, and that's when you have DJs.
That's the thing with the spectators. So like for Hardline, we're going to run a spectator shuttle. We've got like a dedicated course walk past all the big jumps. Like it is an actual product. Like people can buy that product, come here and engage with it. They know exactly what they're doing. Come up here. There's a bar. You can get cocktails. There's going to be a DJ. There's going to be burgers. And then you can walk your way down the course and see the whole thing. Like that's what people want.
It's so simple, man. Like it is
simple.
It is.
Yeah.
Like it's like hard to nail all of it properly and like do it. But
but they're all just bits and pieces. And I feel like a lot of places, like Cannonball's a good one. Amazing event to go as a spectator. But a lot of other events and the World Cups too, they just don't really get that bit right.
There wasn't even a walking track at Ludon VL. So they were climbing fences and stuff. And I'm like, they're the people that promote everything that goes on at this event.
Yeah.
And you're making them climb over fences in the mud. And it's like, how are they going to want to like, and you don't think they're going to be writing the review of the track and they've just been sliding down their ass because there's no track there. You think they're going to be kind about it. It's like, that's how you create something that...
Exactly. And you want them to come back. Like, you don't want spectators to only come once and then be like, that sucked. Like, I'm not going to bother going back again. And the other thing we're really trying to grow is that just general spectator audience, like the non-mountain bikers. It's like if there's a massive event coming and you're near a city, like, why don't you come out? It's like a nitro circus or, some other big action sport event. It's like that crowd is like a whole other group of people that we should be getting to those big mountain bike events.
Would you do, like, for promotional stuff, just say in Hobart, would you go out like the weekend before and have like a pre-party thing to try and just promote hype in town?
We've got all kinds of things going on for that Hardline event in particular, but trying to engage that kind of broader audience, definitely. We haven't done any of it yet. We're going to do it a little bit closer to the event. Like at the moment, it's been more kind of core audience, mountain bike focused, but very much kind of looping in and bringing that whole Hobart crowd out as like the next wave. But because they live there anyway, they don't need to plan travel and all those things. So it's doing it now. We might do it too early is really the thing.
I guess it's also trying to get people in from like obviously all of Oz because it's not that hard.
That was the rush. Like this thing kind of came in relatively last minute in the end. It's like we really need to get this out the door because for a lot of people, it's like what is traveling overseas technically. For most of our audience, it's like relatively expensive flight and a relatively expensive ferry that books out like that. So it is a bit of a thing to kind of get people organised to come over, but people have responded really well. But I think the next year will be, massive when we get the dates out and people can plan ahead a little more.
How is it looking for? Because I know a com in Maydena is.
There is no com in Maydena. No,
is there any plans to like put more cabins, put little units or something just to have more accommodation for when big events like this do go down?
There's stuff going on. I mean, we've got a camping and cabin park going through council at the moment. It's just been a nightmare trying to get all the approvals. We've been working on it for years basically, but that we might have the approvals early next year, but we're going to do camping on there anyway, just with an event permit. But by the time we roll into 2025, that'll be all fully operational. We're doing like a spa, sauna, cold plunge thing on the river, and it's going to be awesome. But that won't be ready quite in time. And there is people wanting to do stuff, but it's just a hard time economically. Like we're kind of hit this upward trajectory of visitors and just growth around the park at the same time as the economy's just tanked and interest rates are up. So people are like, hey, I don't really want to invest in a property because I'm just paying my mortgage at the moment. So I think once that sort of levels out, we get plenty of interest, but it hasn't transpired. And look, we've been only around for 5 years, but we've got heaps of land there ourselves. So we're looking at doing some stuff. It's one of those things, like I'll often sit back a little bit and just wait for people to do things. And if they don't, you're just like, oh, fuck it, I'll just do it myself. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
No, I do know what you mean. And I guess, did you look at Derby of how that's evolved into what it is now, and look at that as like the perfect, like, well, this kind of can't go wrong in a way?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, they're a really different product to us at the start. Like we went pretty hard in the kind of really tough, gnarly mountain bike, steep stuff. Like we had massive hill, 800 meters of vert, and really steep terrain. Like we wanted to be an elite level riding facility when we launched. Derby was very much kind of a mass market kind of trail riding enduro product. And now we've kind of evolved and turned into a lot more of that. But in terms of that investment model around accommodation, that's still going to happen with us. They were at a similar time to us when they saw most of that going on. So we're going to get there. It's just one of those things where I think a lot of people have looked at us and they're like, oh, I don't really want to start a restaurant in Maydena because those guys have already got a restaurant and they're not going to be supportive of my restaurant. And it's like the absolute opposite. We're like, we'd love...
You want the whole thing to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the rising tide will float all the boats. Yeah. It's like we'll get a lot more people if there's a lot more things there to do. And our food's great, but if you do great food too, you'll do just fine.
Yeah.
So
because it needs to become, I guess, more of a location, because Derby had the benefit of being a drive-through town, so people are going to stop in on the way. And,
exactly.
And that's the thing with you guys. You're at the end of the, not the end of the road.
Kind of the end of the road, but I mean, the national park down the road gets nearly 300,000 people a year. We're gradually kind of working to drag some of that crowd up. We've got a new kind of bougier restaurant with kind of wine tasting and other things that we bring online over the summer. The summit venue's awesome. We're gradually sort of trying to do a bit more with that at the top of the mountain. We've got hiking trails going in this summer, some like safari, four-wheel drive, big trees tours, and then the spa sauna thing. So we're gradually getting there. But like I say, it's a lot to do as a small family business. Like we're just encouraging more and more people to get on board and do some stuff. And people are keen. Like they're starting to get keener and keener. Like it's probably every week now I get a message from a few of the big pros. They're like, hey, I've seen this house. I want to buy a house down there. It looks sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gradually kind of getting there.
Dude, I came close to buying the Oval.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's right next door to my place.
Yeah, I was ringing up about that because I was like, but then I was trying to look at permitting and all this other stuff that went along with it. And just with racing and everything, I didn't end up doing it. But it was definitely in my mind because I know you have the vision of how this could be and will be. I guarantee like it will get there. It's just the time frame of when that happens is...
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got a plan and we're gradually ticking off things on that plan. It always happens too slow for me, but that's just me wanting things to move quicker. I think when you try and be objective and step back, you're like, actually, we've done a hell of a lot in a pretty short period of time, but you just always want things to be faster.
Man, I preach that right now. Like I was going to say with the injury, with getting nerves back, it's just like, come on. Like,
hurry the fuck up.
Your body's slowly just waking up and you're like, come on, man. Get more. But yeah, like you said, it'll get there. Like it'll.
Yeah, it's getting there. And you have to stop sometimes. You're like, hey, we've only been doing this for 5 years. It's like, it's not very long. It's really not very long.
And arguably the best mountain bike park in Australia by far.
Yeah, look, we're one of the best, definitely. And I
think best all round.
Yeah.
Like there's some places where you've got a bit, but even this, okay, so you could say Threadbow's better, but they've got a chairlift. But
Threadbow's awesome. It's just totally different. Like I go to Threadbow because I want to ride the lift and I want to hang out in the resort. Like if you want to do, like I've ridden so many, as you would have, so many different places around the world. What we do is like a really core rider focused product. Like the trails are sick. There's a great, massive variety of them. There's not a huge resort town. Like you don't come to Maydena to party. It's not like Queenstown where you're riding and partying. It's like you're here to ride and you're here to do cool shit. Take a 6-pack of beer on an amazing bushwalk to a cave system and waterfalls and things. Like it's just a different kind of vibe. But the community is really building now around the park, which is awesome. Like where people are moving into the town to live and ride, and it's a different kind of vibe, which is, it's cool. Like we love it out there. But yeah, we just need a bit more comm and a bit more food and beverage, other things. So
just to kind of bring people and get them to stay.
Yeah, get them to stay. We've got plans to build like a little mini resort town in the lower part of our property, like all that kind of stuff, like bottle shops and supermarkets and all that kind of thing. Like that's all in the pipeline over the next several years, but we need other people to kind of come along for the journey as well.
If I was going to say, if you were just to guess a time frame, when could you see it getting to a point where you're like, this was kind of the vision that I had on this? Well, like roughly, what would you give, like 10-year plan or more or less?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, if you look back now, we're already so far beyond what I thought it would be when I first started. But I forget that, and I kind of look back and I go, oh fuck, I wish things would just move faster. But then you kind of think back to standing on that hill when there's nothing there, like 10 years ago, and it's like I never thought we would have been here. So. Yeah.
How did you end up in Maydena? How did that become the spot that you ended up at?
Oh, it's a long story, but I'll be brief.
I was going to say, we got time, man. We got time.
So I went back there, 2008, Forestry Tasmania, the state logging company, they had the site and they'd put the building at the top and they'd built a road up to the top, and they were going to do like a big tourism development there of their own. And they had a funicular railway, like a ground-based cable car planned. Basically, all the planning got messed up for that, and they cleared a crooked route for the cable car, and then no one could build it. So they got all these engineers in for Europe. They'd already put this $10 million building on the top of the hill. Like they'd already sunk bulk cash into this thing, and they had this fucking crooked cable car route. You know, it's comical, but actually true. So they couldn't do anything with it. So they called me up. This is like early days, obviously. 08, hadn't been doing it for very long. There was no such thing as a bike park in the country. There was a little bit of stuff in Thredbo, a little bit of stuff in Bulla, but not a legit bike park. So we did a concept plan for them for this massive, like Whistler style bike park, and they were super keen, and they reckoned they could fund it. It was all kind of moving in a really good place. And then at the last minute, they're like, "Nah, we're giving up on tourism completely. Like this tourism gig is fucked. It's not working out for us." So the whole thing just went belly up, right? And nothing happened there for another 5 years or so. And then the government put this expressions of interest process out. They're like, "We've got this random building on top of a hill." Got handed back to Parks and Wildlife. They're like, we don't know what the hell to do with it. Like, is anyone in the business community got any ideas? So I saw all that come out and I was like, oh, would be cool, but still, too early. So that kind of got passed in and nothing happened, and we just forgot about it again. And then the government released another, a kind of broader expression of interest process for all of the parks estates. And that it's been about 2014 or 15. And this time I looked at it and I was like, all right, now we're in a position where I think we should actually have a really good crack at this thing. So put a proposal together, took like 3 years to kind of negotiate all the leasing. There was private land we had to get through. There was like 4 different people owned the shuttle road. Like there's this massive, massive process. Took us ages to get the approval to go through the private logging land. Like that was probably nearly 2 years negotiating that. And then we went through there and we built all the trails, and they just threw the toys out of the cot because they didn't realize how big the trails were going to be. And we just like decimated their plantation area because the trails were so wide. So they they
would not
totally cracked it. Yeah. But then like pure luck, but they were in the process of selling all their land because they needed the money. They were having some financial trouble. And we were like, well, hey, you sell all that land to this company and they're going to let you do all your forestry ops. Why don't you just sell us this little bit and then we'll be out of your way and you never have to deal with us again. So we ended up actually buying a whole bottom half of the hill from the logging company as part of this bigger transaction. And then it was funny, actually, they sold us the wrong land because they were selling like 1,000 different property titles. Like,
they sold you the wrong one.
Yeah, we got the settlement from the lawyers. It's like, oh, here you go, your settlement's gone through, here are your titles. And I was like, that's not the right titles. Like they sold our bike park to someone else basically, and we had to undo the whole thing.
Go through it.
Yeah.
What did you get somewhere?
It's just next door, like some random shitty old bit of land.
Was it better or worse?
No, it was worse.
I was way worse. I was going to imagine it was way better. Like, we're good. We're good. We'll take that.
No. But so it was a process. I mean, it's still like we have a long-term lease with the government, similar to a ski resort for the top of the hill. We own the bottom, but then we had the primary school at the bottom and the council came to us. That's where our base building is. And the school hadn't been there for 10 years before we started, 5 or 10 years. And we were just going to build this janky little building there to operate the bike park out of up on the hill. They came to us and they said, oh, do you want to buy the primary school? And I was like, well, yeah, I suppose. Like, depends on the deal, but I'm happy to do it. And they said, oh, we'll just do a peppercorn lease, like pay $1 a year for the first year until we figure out the sale agreement. So we did this sale agreement. It was all done. Like we had a signed, sealed sale agreement with them and we were just leasing the building, and it kept going for a few years. And I wasn't too stressed. I was like, oh, I'm paying $1 a year for this thing. It's a pretty good deal. I've got my sale agreement. I'm not too worried. And then they ring me up one day and they said, oh, you know that sale agreement? We actually had a deal with the government when they gave us the building that we weren't allowed to rent it to you. And or you're not allowed to rent it at all. And if they rent it commercially, it voids the transfer of the property. So the building was actually owned by the state government. So they were like, we can't sell it to you anymore. I was like, fuck. And by this point, we'd spent like $500,000 in the building, fitting it all out and new kitchen and the whole
Turning it into what it is, yeah.
Turning into what it is today with the view that we were going to buy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the end, it sort of rolled into our lease with the rest of the property. But it's just been this constant,
So you don't, do you own it? So do you own it now? Or are you still
No, we're still going to try and buy it out off the government. So there is still this kind of gentleman's agreement that they will sell it to us at some point. But we're actually looking at building a whole new building for the base operations of the park and sort of tying in a potential lift and a few other things a little bit further up the hill.
I was going to ask you that. What's the...
Everyone asks.
I was going to... Everyone wants...
The chairlift question.
Everyone wants to know, yeah. Because that's obviously pipe dream, goal...
Oh, yeah, 100%. And we will get there. Part of the work, so we went to Europe earlier in the year just to look at a whole bunch of different lift systems. We looked at the ground-based lift systems. We messed around with that a little bit. Yeah, look, it's a big goal. So initially we looked at putting in a high-speed quad detachable, like where the lift slows down and lets you on and off. It's like $10 million or so to do that. So it's like probably not the best fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't know where we'll go with it, to be honest. Look, we'll get there. Probably 5 years. We've said 5 years we'll have a lift, but it might be like a second-hand lift with a nice system, but not the bougie bells and whistles thing.
But I get the other thing is you need the infrastructure there to help. Like if it's okay, you put the lift in. No one. Where are people going to sleep?
Yeah, that's it.
And
that's where we've kind of left. Like I've said, we want the lift by year 10, which is 5 years away from now, to give people an understanding of like this is where we want to be in year 10, but we need you to come along with us. Like we need some little hotels, we need some accommodation, we need some other people to do shit. Like that the time now is so ripe for investment in the town because the buy price for property is so low. Like it hasn't seen that growth of a lot of the other, like Derby's sort of at 700 grand now. So for a house, it dropped from nearly $1 million, but we're sort of sitting at 400. And it's like there's such a huge area of growth above the current price as we kind of get these bigger events and things moving. So it's a great time to do stuff. And look, as I say, a lot of people are interested, gradually moving towards things, but again, too slow for me.
Yeah, I think that's always going to be the thing. You want it to be faster.
Yeah,
like,
always.
No matter what it is.
Yeah.
But I guess you just got to keep up with the whole idea of, okay, everything needs to go in place when you're building it as well. Because even the chairlift thing gets thrown around at Bright all the time. Like
yeah, exactly.
And I just thought about it. I was like, how do you put a chairlift here and bring that many more people in and you can't put a doctor in at the local hospital? Like every time someone hurts themselves, it's like, all right, go to Wang.
Yeah, it doesn't work, right?
I'm like, this is an extreme sports spot in Australia for paragliding, for downhill, for running, for hiking.
Yeah.
And you hurt yourself and it's like, all right, drive an hour.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a whole thing that goes along with a lift. Like you've got to have a rescue team there for lift rescue, like all the stuff that people don't really think of. They're like, oh, the lift just takes me up and down. It's like if the lift breaks down, you've got to have a rescue team there all the time to take people down off the chairs. Like it's not as bad in summer because you're not going to freeze to death, but you still have to have all these different systems in place. Like if a bus breaks down now, it doesn't happen very often, but if it does, we just pick them up in another bus. Like it's pretty easy. So the system works okay at the moment, but we're looking, first stage would be a lift to the top of the land we own, which is about 30 of vertical. So really similar to Fitz Chair at Whistler, which a lot of people would be familiar with. So we will build like a whole bike park underneath the main park, basically. Serviced by that lift is the plan, and then shuttle bus people to the top of the mountain. It's the kind of working model, because obviously 800 vert in a gondola or a chairlift is kind of stratospheric kind of money. We're not doing that right now, but it is semi-realistic for what it's realistic within 5 years that we work towards a lift for the lower part of the hill. Absolutely. And
then you could just rotate. Like obviously it's going to split up a lot of the traffic in buses as well. So everything's going to free up and it's going to make it.
The whole system works better. I mean, buses move people in lumps. If you're running a lift, it moves them continuously. So you don't get as many people pushing through the trail in big groups. And we're not huge busy, but we get really busy in summer. The network's designed to kind of spit people out kind of far and wide, but it is starting. Like last summer was the first time where I was riding a bit and going, fuck, there's a lot of people around. Like these guys are all in the way. Like mainly big groups of dudes where there's like 10 or 12 guys and they're just clogging up all the intersections.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that? Because you'd be pumped that so many people at your park, but then you're like, fuck, I just go out some room. I just go out in the mornings. Like honestly, it's funny. I very rarely get on a shuttle. Like I'll just go out for a pedal in the morning and just pedal around for an hour. Try and get one in at the end of the day, like when the uplift shuts. I might sneak a run in with the kids or something during the day, but I'm normally working during the day. So up at the park most of the time at the moment, getting stuff done. But it's like work during the day, go for a pedal in the morning, pedal in the afternoon. A lot of the staff do the same thing. They'll often sneak out for a lunch lap or something and just go for a pedal. Go for a cruise.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I know you probably do this anyway, but with the lift, if you do put one in, tell me you're going to build a track just directly underneath it.
Yeah, you have to, right? Isn't that a thing?
That's right. I never understand that when you go to and it's like just over there.
Yeah.
Like I want to see my buddies. Like I want to see
it's
other
like
people.
That kind of first tabletop on A-line there, like right under the lift. It's just like a squid catcher where you just unfortunately see people eat shit constantly.
Yeah. But why don't you just make that snake the whole way down where the lift is?
Be cool. Yeah, it'd be really cool. And where we're going to put it is like the main hotspot for trails in the park anyway, to be honest. It's kind of the drier ridgeline where we've put most of the lower trails and most of the jump trails and things. So it's a good spot for it.
They're all linked together in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the goal.
What do you think the biggest reason, because I feel like obviously, like you said, it's a different product, but it's also really far ahead of what I believe is most other mountain bike parks in Australia, like Bulla, Thredbo, even Bright. Like they're so far behind in my opinion than where you've gotten in a shorter period of time.
I think the big thing is we're not a resort company and we're a family business. Early on, we had opportunities to bring in outside money and we still do, but stubbornly and usually regrettably, we've never gone down that path. Like we've done it all ourselves. And the main reason for that was that I wanted to have absolute control over what we did. And I wanted to be really sure that we were reinvesting. Like from an investor point of view, they'd look at us and go, this is a fucking terrible business. Like you guys are just putting all the money back into the business. Like you're not making any money. You're just growing the business. But for us, like that's what we want to do. And we want to be able to innovate and move quickly and do cool shit at the end of the day. So we come up with an idea, we workshop it, we do it. We don't have to go to corporate and get sign off from marketing and sign off from someone else. Like having that agility and flexibility and just passion for the sport. Like we're not owned by some billion-dollar company. We're not there trying to make money. We're there to do cool things for mountain biking. So everything we do is focused on that, which I think is probably our biggest point of difference. And then you look at the big public trail networks. They're doing a great job too, but there's lots of different people at the table with competing ideas and competing priorities and competing goals and things. Whereas we're just like a singular focus on like, if we make a decision, it's signed off by me ultimately. There's not some board there to argue about it for 6 weeks. Like it's like, cool idea. Let's go. Off we go and get it done.
It's kind of just peace of mind really, isn't it? This is what we want to do. We're going to do it. Because I remember we talked back, I think when I think it was national champs or something, we were talking about, I was saying how Bright's not going anywhere and nothing's happening and it's stagnated. And it's just because there's so many different entities that are in that hill that, like you say, you sit at a board. Okay, we want to change this jump. All right, it's got to go through this guy, and then they've got to see it, and then this person's got to see it, and then by the time it's done, that people
look, everyone's incentives are different, and we've done a lot of work trying to help Bright and move that to a place where it's I would argue better. Like Bright's awesome, but as you would know, there's massive potential.
So much more potential.
So much potential.
So much, man. I'm like, I look at it, it makes me angry. I would even go up and like work on it. Yeah. And then a few times I went up working on it, and I got permission from I can't remember the guy's name now. Gave me permission to go up and just clean it up because I was like, I need a track to train on. Yeah. And if this is sketchy, I got to make it at least rideable. So I was going up there with rakes and shovels and fixing it up. And one of the workers got angry at me and he's like, no, you can't come up here and work on it. And I'm like, dude, I'm doing your job for free and I'm doing it better than you're doing it. And then you're not only not doing it, you're trying to stop me from then doing it as well. I'm like, you're not even, it was just so frustrating to.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's a few big trail networks now looking at, and look, this is contentious, but looking at a model where they will bring in a commercial entity to run that park for them. And I mean, we've set up a business almost specifically to do that, looking at, helping commercial entities run bike parks and running them ourselves basically. But that model of like from my point of view, everything's kind of aligned. Like if you're the sole entity responsible for delivering that product and experience. Like, you're not going to drop the ball on trail maintenance because, you know, you're then ruining your product. You're not going to run a shitty bike patrol medical service because then it's to the detriment of your product. Like, if everything's kind of part of an ecosystem there, I think you'll end up getting better results, and then everyone else can kind of fill out around that with the other higher offerings and the food and beverage and everything else. But it'll be interesting to see where it all goes, because a lot of these big networks are struggling with maintenance and management costs at the end of the day. So how do you make that work? Like, is it fair that if you go to one of the best trail networks in the country, Derby, for trail riding, that it's just free? Like, should there be a small cost on that? I mean, I would argue, like, let's give a local season pass to people for a really low cost, $100 a year or something, similar to what Bright does. So basically anyone can afford it. If you've got a bike, $100 a year, surely not, for most people, that much of a stretch. But if you're going there as a tourist and it costs you $10 or $15 a day to do something fucking amazing on your bike, like, is that not reasonable? I mean, I would have thought so, because then you know you're giving back and you're supporting that trail network, and it can be sustainable. Like, the last thing we want is these epic riding destinations to fall apart because no one's got the $1 million a year to maintain them. So it'll be an interesting space.
I fully agree with that. And also, I think the right people to maintain them as well is a big thing. That's not only, okay, you've got the dollars to do it, but then you're employing people that actually don't know how to fix things properly.
Yep.
And that's another thing that, like, how do you become qualified at trail building? Like, how do you? It doesn't exist.
It's a good question.
It doesn't exist.
Look, it's been bandied around amongst us trail builders for a while. Like, and I know that some people have done some work with TAFE courses and other things. So maybe, but it's one of those things. It's such a kind of heart and soul passion thing.
It's an art project, man.
Yeah.
And I don't think, because someone, I remember when I was younger, they're like, oh, you're really good at riding. And I was like building a trail at the time. And I was like, I think I'm probably better at building tracks than I am at riding now. Because it's like,
it's funny though. Not all riders are good at building trails. Like, you get some absolutely amazing, talented riders can't build a trail to save themselves. A lot of them can. And having that riding ability really helps. I mean, we have a pretty structured training pathway now for our staff, but no, there's no formal qualification.
Because you're doing a math, like, think about when you build, I remember, I never forget it, I was building a jump once. Yeah. And my grandfather came up to me and he's like, how do you know how big to make it?
Yeah, exactly right.
And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know. And it's just 20 years of riding bikes and jumping. Right? But your brain's doing this math equation that you don't even know how it's happening.
You get more and more confident, and then you're out looking at other stuff and you're like, that jump sucks. Like, why is the transition so tight? Like, I can jump it fine, but a beginner level rider can't do it. It's like this argument the other day where a lot of the guidelines are now saying that intermediate jumps need to be quite small. And it's like, but then you've got a really harsh transition. Like, intermediate jumps should be big with a really mellow transition and a mellow release point. If you make them really small, you end up with this really tight transition. It just throws people off. So again, it's just a lack of understanding of how a trail actually works. Like,
that exactly what you're saying. There was a jump, you probably hit it. It was on Hero Bright. It was towards the bottom where you kind of go over it and then you'd go up a road for a little bit.
Yep.
You used to turn left, and there was a jump and it kicked you because it was just short and sharp.
Yeah.
But the run in, all the 6 jumps before it were all mellow.
Yep.
So it like put you in this false sense of security, and then you'd go over the bars on that. I think it broke, I don't even know how many collarbones, man.
Yeah.
So in summer, there was like 7 in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and look, honestly, we've had jumps at Maydena that haven't worked out. It's like very rare now, and we fix them very quickly. But sometimes the guys will build something and you're like, fuck that, that's not going to work. Like, we need to mellow that thing out. And usually it's because people are trying to get too sharp, too steep, and just throw people up into the air. And as an elite rider, it's, you know, you deal with it, like, you can jump anything. But for the day-to-day weekend warrior, they hit that thing and they're just dead sailor.
I really think a good trail builder can build something that's fun for a pro and a beginner, and it's just, you just have to ride it differently. But you can have fun on both.
Yep. Yeah. And look, I think that is the hallmark of a good trail. I think there's a whole other argument behind that of, like, we need that diversity of trail. And one of the things we found early on was, like, we built a whole bunch of really good double black jump trails, and they worked fine. But we didn't have any blue jump trails. So all the intermediate riders are like, well, I'm just going to go hit the black stuff. And then they're getting smoked. So it's like, we'll build the intermediate stuff, and now the injury rates drop down to almost nothing. But it's having that mix of options for people because they will just send anything. That's what we've found. It's like, particularly in groups, they come in and you see them like standing on the side of the trail with all their GoPros, and it's like, it's not going to end well. You watch them, you're like, I know that you shouldn't be riding that trail. Like,
Yeah. Do you ever see people and just go, oh, this is you probably go down that one?
Yeah, we had, you'd probably remember Maydena hits is like our kind of crabapple hit style, just big straight tabletops. And we had the last one was like 45 foot, I think. It was trail speed, perfect. Like you just roll in, hit that thing, not a worry in the world. But it became like a rite of passage. Everyone that came to the park, rightly or wrongly, was like, I'm going to hit that jump. So you'd see people, and we just had so many collarbones and things because people would just sprint at it. Like they'd land and they'd stress out. So they'd get on the pedals. You'd be riding past, you see them sprinting, and you're like, I can't watch.
They just go way too far.
Straight over deep and just bang. So we just deleted the jump. We're like, it's not worth it. We just turned it into a roller.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was just too easy for people to get in there and get out over the head, basically.
Well, that's the thing. At least you made the effort to get rid of it and change it because you realized.
Yeah. We did a year or so with that thing. We're like, it's not worth it. Like too many people are getting hurt. So you have to change those things sometimes. And
I was so tempted when that jump I heard it like did 7 collarbones in the 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to go out there at night with a tick and just knock out my.
Yeah.
It's going to help so many people not having that jump there because it's hurting so many people. But then eventually, I think they.
Yeah, and look, it's hard. It's hard with jumps. Like there's so many variables. And particularly when you're building like really big jumps, there are just so many variables around release angle and gap and entry speed and everything else. And then when you're getting really big, it's like the other variables of wind and braking and other things. So it's interesting.
Do you think everything, like all the jumps that are built in Australia, are too tamed or dumbed down?
I don't know if they're too tamed or dumbed down. The thing I see, particularly here in Queensland, actually, to be honest, is a lot of just like really short, sharp transitions that they work fine if you know how to ride, but they're not very good if you're intermediate. It's like just mellow that thing out. Double jumps for intermediate, not really a thing. I think camelback or tabletop is fine, but you don't need to hit a double when you're an intermediate rider. It just doesn't really make sense. You need to be able to learn to just compress off that jump, preload, and just skip over onto the tabletop and into the landing. Like double jumps for that level of rider, or even black trails, to be honest. Like you look at Whistler, A-line, you can roll that whole thing. Like my wife and daughter can roll that trail. It's still fun. Like we don't need to have these giant gaps where if you come up short, you're just going to completely destroy yourself.
But I guess that's the kind of, it looks kind of cooler anyway. And that's what people
cool.
attach themselves to that. Hey, and
totally.
Really want to get that.
To be honest, though, I think a lot of it's just laziness and budget. In Australia, it's like, well, hey, we've only got X amount of dollars and time to build a jump. So it takes twice as long to build it properly and turn it into a camelback jump or a tabletop. So let's just get it done. Just build the lip, build the landing, move on, basically.
But I guess this leads me on to, obviously you're having a hardline event now. How much control do you have over not only running the event, but also building the track?
Yeah, a lot actually. So one of our provisos at the start was that we wanted to run the event. So we've worked with other event companies before, and we do things a little bit differently at Maydena. We're very focused on the experience for everyone, and for us to be able to pull the levers and drive the event ourselves was really important. So we are event managing it ourselves, which is great. Done plenty of big events before. This one is particularly big, but for us, we really wanted to be the one at the wheel. So working really closely with the Red Bull team, obviously, and they're awesome. Just giving us the tools we need and the support we need to do things. And there's obviously things they need from their point of view that we have to tick off in terms of athlete experience and safety and broadcast and everything else. But we do have a lot of control over the event. In terms of the course, to be honest, it's much the same. Like we've had input from all sorts of different people, but I designed that course working with our team, basically. So I spent days and days and days on the hill scouring for the best terrain and the best lines. And once I found that, I worked with our team to piece it all together, basically, into a holistic, massive, crazy course. So it's been largely driven by us, which is awesome.
Is that almost like a dream come true while you're walking it, just thinking I'm about to find what's going to be considered the hardest mountain bike race in the world? It's
a dream, but it's also really stressful. So one of the reasons we went over to Europe was to actually look at the Hardline course in the UK. So I had a really good look at that with Dan and his team. And yeah, it's an eye-opener. Like you look at it in the broadcast and you think, well, that's pretty gnarly. But when you look at it in real life, it's more than pretty gnarly. It's definitely right at the edge of what is possible for anyone, let alone, the top riders in the world. So from our perspective, I guess we're really cognizant of the fact that what we build has to be at least equal to Wales in terms of difficulty and challenge, but we are keen to try and make it safer. So we've got a lot of things in place to minimize the consequence. Like the features are huge and really technical up the top and big cliff drops and things, but we're going to work to put that in a context where it's as safe as possible, because we want it to be really hard, we want it to be really gnarly, and we want people to be absolutely stretched in terms of their ability, but we want everyone to go home and walk home and not go home via an ambulance at the end of the day.
And I think that's the thing we talked about before. If you can make a track that's hard but also enjoyable, like if you nail it, it's not like I nailed that drop perfectly and still like blew my shins out because it was that harsh of a landing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's something that happens in Wales. Like there's a big rock drop after the big moto jump. If you grease that thing, man, like even if you grease it, you're still
heavy,
like almost snapping your bike.
So heavy. The drop itself is fine. Like even I'll look at it and I'm like, that's big, but if it had a nice landing, it's not that bad. But you're landing pretty flat in a bunch of rocks, basically. Which, look, you could argue it's hard for sure, but I'd almost say it's kind of harsh. Like we some of our stuff, like we also want some trickable jumps. So I mean, they've got the kind of big steel step up that people can trick. Different context for us, but we will have some big trickable jumps as well, because there is a bunch of free races and things.
They just want to just go and have fun and do whips.
It's a spectacle,
like chaos and stuff.
Yeah.
They just want to go do whips, and it's like sell that. And
we got a jump jam as part of the event. So we're doing like a brand new massive free ride venue as well. So we'll have like a big jump jam with a bunch of that crew that are coming down. But one of the other things for us was to actually make it what we feel will be more in line with a World Cup downhill race. So more line choice and more sort of natural technicality up the top. So it is actually a downhill race. Like you won't win this thing if you're a free racer or a free rider. Like we want you to come along and get involved if you're at that level and can ride the course, but a racer is going to win this. Like it's a really tough downhill race. And I guess you could argue about what Hardline should be or what it is, but I think at the end of the day, from our point of view, it's like, this is a downhill race. We want it to be at the absolute pinnacle of what a downhill race can be. But we don't just want one line. It's like, just hold on and hope for the best. Like there has to be some line choice and tactics and other things.
I'm excited. I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to, you can't say who's coming, but there's some big name guys that are most likely coming.
Yeah,
coming
the roster is surprising. So we've been working on this one for a few weeks. People, will be a little surprised. There's some names in there that are amazing and you wouldn't expect at a Hardline event, is all I can say. So we're super excited. And from a course point of view, like I said, it's different to Wales. We've been clear from the start that we're not just going to go out and carbon copy that course and put it in Maydena. So it is very Maydena centric, but it's huge. I mean, it's a bunch of people are like, oh, it's going to be open to the public. We'd love to come and have a ride. I'm like, guys, if the public could ride this, we wouldn't be doing our job properly. Like this is terrifying for everyone in the venue. Like even our top athlete racers are like, I'm not really sure.
Would you just shut it? And once it's raced, are you just going to shut it? No one rides it.
That's
no
it.
one rides it.
Yeah, and look, it crisscrosses a bunch of other trails on the hill. So we ended up moving it to sit on top of, some people would know, Pandani trails, like a whole bunch of cliff lines that you kind of weave your way through. So it sort of skips over the top of that at the top, which is great because the spectators can kind of work their way down the course, but there's no way to open that publicly. And I mean, the first bit, the drops are not huge. They're kind of 3-4 meters.
That makes it better though. I always thought about if you had a track and then it turns into a bike park because everyone rides it, and then you just got this sketchy hard packed bike park track.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to be natural and stay natural for as long as it
can.
And
I guess the other thing is like it's huge and there are no B lines. Yeah. So there's absolutely no B lines. Like you can't, if you're not sending that 8 meter cliff drop or jumping that 40-foot double to lily pad to whatever else. There's no.
You're in the wrong place, boy. Yeah. You're in the wrong place.
Well, there's no trail in between. Yeah. Like there's a 90-foot creek gap, and you can't roll through the creek. It's a fucking canyon.
Is that the biggest? Is that the biggest jump?
It's definitely not.
What do you think the biggest jump will be? Like what size?
Over 100. Yeah, that's the current. So we've bulked out the last jump now, and it's well over 100.
That's just at the very bottom.
Very bottom. Yeah, we're just working on. We've got to work on the rider entry speed and things. There's a few other big features. So a big sort of shark fin thing, like probably the biggest shark fin in the world, I reckon, sort of leads into that. It's like a 3-story high shark fin. It's pretty mental. But yeah, it's cool, but there's no way around it. Like you can't, and like I say, with some of the sections, there'll be double jumps to double jumps to double jumps, like supercross rhythms. There's no trail in between. You're just like jumping over ferns. So you can't roll through because there's no trail.
You got to just do it.
Launching your way through. And part of that with Hardline, I think, getting that understanding in the UK was like part of what makes it hard is the frequency of the features, and they are like bang, bang, bang. Like if you miss one, you're not going to make the next two. And if you don't commit properly to the first one, you're going to throw yourself off the second and third and be in a real state because you haven't got the speed right and things. So not only is everything big, you've also got to be able to put it together. And talking to the guys over there, it's like, Jackson was the only one who was there on day 2 or whatever, just punching laps. Like everyone else is still trying to figure out how to actually link first and second features together rather than do the whole thing in one go. So we've been really conscious of that too. It's like no one should be able to turn up at that course on day 1 and just be able to punch. Maybe Jackson because he's a freak, but
first run challenge kind of thing, just straight off the bat, just go down.
You won't be able to. Like you absolutely will not be able to. Not possible.
But like you said, you would hope that you want it to.
Yeah, totally. People. Like it has to be, and that was what Dan Atherton was really clear on from the start. Like they really want to push the absolute edge of the sport, and there's only a handful of people that can actually do that, and that's why the rider list is hard. I mean, there's actually a lot of people that want to get involved, and there's quite a few actually that will miss out that are more than capable of Hardline, but it is very much just a small group of athletes, bunch of guys, few girls, and yeah, it's.
I wonder because I know when I watch it now and like Flo Payette goes to it and he says it's just like the funnest thing. They go play rugby, they do all this fun stuff. But I wonder if it will grow to the point where it just becomes a World Cup to like a select few. And I guess that's what the kind of World Cup is trying to market themselves to as well. So it's a similar thing, but it's the opposite because it's chilled out, relaxed event, but there's a limited amount. And the other one, they want to go super serious, but a limited amount. And like they're kind of the polar opposite, but...
And it is quite different in that in both of them, right, the athlete is the product. Like the athlete is the one providing the experience that is broadcast. But in Hardline, the athletes are paid to be there. In a World Cup, the athletes are paying to be there. So you're coming in with a different mindset from the start. It's like we're actually brought here by Red Bull and they are giving us this amazing experience. So there's a whole bunch of athlete entertainment and all sorts of other things that we're doing, like really cool, fun stuff. So they're coming down for a week of good times because we know that they're going to be stressing about the Hardline thing. So the one thing that we'll have really dialed is that whole athlete experience and communication and working like super closely with them around the course and like different practice uplifts and I guess trying to be as supportive as we can. Like we want them all to come online and be really supported through that practice and feel that they can do it in a way that's really safe and organised. It's like you're not just left to your own devices out on the course. Like, there you go, guys, all the best. And then we just go and sit in our booth down the bottom and send emails. It's like we'll actually be up there with you, working through the process with you and helping support it and making sure that, everyone's comfortable. And if something's not working out, we've got a team there to tune it and fix it. And yeah, it'll be an interesting experience for sure. But I think we're in a really good place with it in terms of where we want to take that event. And as you know, like building it into that big 5-day mountain bike festival, which is a different focus again. Like you look at Crankworks and it's amazing, but it has become kind of corporate in many ways. Like it's less rider focused than it used to be. Like you look at a slopestyle and it's like, rider ready, 3, 2, 1, you get 2 runs, you're done.
Yeah.
Like our jump jam is going to be really low key. Like you have a session and then you'll be judged on 3 different metrics, like a best trick, best whip off, steeziest, most styly rider. And you just get an hour to have fun or whatever it might be. It's a jam.
Yeah.
It's a jam.
Way less pressure, way more fun.
Totally.
Chilled out. You can still win.
Totally. There'll be a bar there. There's DJs. The whole thing will be a massive party, but the riders there actually having fun. And we feel like we're going to get more out of the riders in a session like that than we would if it was like hey, here's your run, do your trick. Here's your run or a standard whip off or something. Like we want it to be really rider-centric event. And there's a bunch of other race events like the King and Queen of the Mountain where anyone can come and race. You choose your own trail. We've got like 100 trails on the hill. So you can choose whatever race line you want. Fastest line down wins. So there's a really cool narrative around, hey, which course are you riding? Like for some riders at the elite level, there is no fastest line down the hill. Like it depends on what you're better at riding. So an event like that I think is really cool as well because you can then race with all the top guys and girls. You can ride a blue flow trail and they can be riding pro lines to get down the hill.
Yeah, and go down. I think what you said there, which I thought was really cool, was like you care about the rider experience that's coming there. And like you say with UCI and stuff like that, like I didn't get any, when I had my accident, no messages, nothing, no like you're all good, nothing like that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's it's not just a missed opportunity, but it's a fuck up. I think at the end of the day, like they need to show a little more care for the athletes and be more engaging.
Well, I just asked for like an accident report for insurance that I haven't got it yet.
Yeah, right.
Just stuff like that, you know. Yeah. Just and like I don't care that much about normal things, but like about that, I'm like I don't need a big hug and a you okay kind of thing. But,
but it would still be nice to have a follow up, right? Like
just Well, just the actual thing I need to claim my insurance would be that I'm happy with
just
that.
Give me that bit.
The bare minimum is that. And after that, do what you want. But I know it's like you said though, which I really liked, is like you're going to put care into the athletes because you want them to come back.
And to be fair, I guess it's a little easier for us. Like we have 35 athletes and a couple of development riders, so it's a little easier. But in saying that, like if you do want to shrink that World Cup field down, or even if you don't, like the riders are the spectacle. And yeah, I do feel like there's a piece there that's still missing. It's like you need to be...
It's communication, man. We don't talk to each other.
Yep.
And that's the thing, even this year at the World Cups, like I was shocked that Pink Bike was sharing all my stuff when they didn't run an event and all this stuff. And I'm like, why are me and Eddie Masters providing more information than the broadcasting...
Yeah.
Man, if I had an iPhone, I could just walk around and give literally updates about every single thing that's happening in real time straight away.
And maybe they don't, maybe they do have it, but I feel like they actually need that, like a rider liaison manager. It's like someone like a Reese or someone like Reese who's like
an actual
who's
rep
really
that does
there
stuff.
rider centric.
And there's the riders rep, but Greg doesn't.
Yeah, but like a paid role, like an actual management paid role. That's like their job is to make sure that all the riders are happy and engaged with them.
Gwyn and Nico were kind of doing. They were doing it, but it was just, I don't think you can do it as a rider.
And Rue's good. Like Rue Cunningham's great, but he's busy on the course. It's like, I feel like you need someone there that's like just checking in on the teams and liaising and providing information and everything else. Like, I feel like that's an area where, again, I'm really broadly supportive of what Warner Brothers are doing, but there are definitely some things where they can plug a few little holes and it would make a massive difference.
My biggest thing, and it's been the whole time, is just communication. Like, we don't get told stuff. It comes from Warner Brothers. Like, who's making these decisions? Like, I always, you know, when there's like a UFC fight or something, afterwards there's a press conference. Dana White goes to the front, talks to the media. This is what happened. This is why this happened. This is the person that made the call. Like, all these things are so simple if you just explain them to us. But if you don't say anything and hide behind the Warner Brothers logo, it's like, who's making this shit happen?
Yeah, well, it's even like the calendar. I mean, you probably saw it early on. There was a calendar that got kicked around a few months ago that looked fucking way better than the one we ended up with. So everyone's like, oh, cool, we're going to get a whole bunch of rounds. We're going, still Europe, but, you know, we're going to a bunch of places. The actual calendar comes out, particularly for Enduro, and people are like, what the hell's this horse shit? Like, where are all the races? Like, Tassie was amazing. Why aren't we going back to Tassie? Why have we only got 5 rounds, whatever it is, for Enduro? Obviously, there's some background banter about, you know, the budgets are tight for teams, and I don't know, but maybe it was shrunk down because the industry is having a bit of a hard time. But if that is the case, communicate that. Like, just say to people, the reason we have a European-focused cup with less rounds is because the team budgets are tight. We'd rather do that than lose more teams out of the series. And then people, even the Pink Bike Warriors, would be like, cool, that kind of makes sense. Like, it sucks, but I get it. But when you just get that landed there and you're like, heaps of people coming to us and me and saying, well, where's Maydena? Well, I thought you guys were going to have another round. It's like, well, we tried. Like, we said we wanted to host in 2024 and we were told, hey, no, look at 2025. So
yeah, that's the thing, people. But again, it comes back to, I'm angry about the lack of communication. I'm not angry about the series or about even when like the race was cancelled at Ludon Viel, the juniors and stuff, and I made a heap of noise. Like, I don't really care that the race is cancelled. I'm not even racing in it.
Just communicate
I'm
better.
pissed off that you're not telling anyone why it's happening. You just said race is cancelled and then kind of hide behind a few like Instagram reels and stuff going like, congratulations, Ryan Pinkerton. Like, it's like, can you please explain why? And then everyone talks between themselves, comes up with a million different ideas and spreads that out. And like, some are right, some are wrong, some are whatever. But if you just come out and stand in front of everyone and go, this is why we did it. This is the safety coordinator. They made this call. Like, be accountable for things that are happening. And you're just not. And that's what's annoying. That's my big thing. Everyone thinks that I'm pissed off about.
Fair. Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty simple to be.
Yeah, it is. And I guess looking at the other side, devil's advocate, I know they have a lot on the plate, and I know that their intentions are good, and I know they're working hard. But I do feel like if they just fix those couple of little things, the whole thing would be infinitely better.
Yeah.
Like with a pretty light lift. Like you're not asking for that much. It's like just communicate a little more, explain things, involve us a little more in some of the decision making, and then suddenly the athletes are probably pretty happy.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Dude, I sent Chris Ball a message to come on the podcast. Like, I want to talk to you. I want to understand why what is happening and give you a voice to say it. And if you're saying stuff that I don't think's true, I'll call you out. If you're like, it's just like actually have an open discussion about this and be like, why is this?
Yeah, I feel like because like I say, I mean, I've spoken to Chris a few times, and I personally feel like what they're trying to do is good.
I
for
agree.
The most part.
I agree for sure.
Yeah, I think if that was conveyed better, I think more people would be like, okay, we get it. It's cool. We can see what you're trying to do.
I don't think people that were once like world champions, like Rory and stuff, would come into a sport and try and destroy it.
Fuck no.
I don't believe that one bit. Again,
no. And look at what the AWS was. Like, admittedly, not quite the same now, but that was rider driven. They went to amazing venues. They had good media. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. And it was very much a core kind of series where punters could come and race, elites could race. It was about venues. Like, they went to the best venue. They didn't give a shit about whether you had infrastructure, the whole big marketing, branding, corporate shit. They went to Derby early on. They came to us early on. It was very much venue driven, whereas now it feels like it's driven by a different kind of agenda for enduro. It's like the riders at enduro, they're riding, 6 stages, long stages. If they all suck, it's a pretty shitty day. And a lot of the riders are like, look, we enjoyed it when it was 2 days or 1.5 days. Like, part of it for us was actually going to a destination and enjoying the destination and learning about it and engaging and riding a whole bunch of different stuff. It feels like that's now kind of shrunk into this little package again, and it needs to kind of go back a bit more to where it was and be more about going to cool places and having a great time. And just go a little further afield than Europe would be a great start.
Man, that's like every time I talk to Eddie, Wynn, Jack, any of those guys, they're just like, it's kind of turning into downhill where you just go Leo Gang, you go Fort William, you go Val de Sol, we just rotate those venues, and then you don't actually see the world.
That's part of what it was, I think, early on. I mean, I raced a few EWSs, a couple, but I mean, the reason you do it is, as a punter anyway, to go race somewhere cool.
Yeah.
Like, and to actually be able to race with the pros is really fun. Like, if you can do it in a format that you race the day prior, it's just a really cool thing to do as a punter. And that's one of the things we try to do with that Gravity Fest event with Hardline is actually give people a chance to race. Like, you go to Crankworks, for example, and it's cool, but you're really there to spectate. Like, as a punter, there's not a lot you can do on your bike, especially in Cairns. There's a little bit of riding, but it's not like Rotorua. There's hundreds of kilometres of trails. Like, you're going there really just to watch the event. And we're like, look, we want there to be that spectacle of Hardline, but also a chance to get on your bike, ride, race, have some fun.
Well, you're just appealing to more people. Like, people want to go there and ride and watch, and then you just give them both the opportunity to do that in the same
Well, the other
day.
thing is too, we're in Tassie, right? So it's a big cost to get there. So we've got a value add to the effort of getting there. It's like, if you're going to travel all that way, you probably want to bring your bike. And if you're going to bring your bike, we want to make sure that you can have a good time on your bike.
Again, simple stuff.
Simple.
I really think it's like, okay, we have a bike park. You want to ride your bike? Ride your bike. Okay, there's some pros over here that are going to throw themselves off.
Come and enjoy it. So,
come watch it.
Yeah, and if you want to do uplifts on that day, you can do uplifts, and you can just peel across. Like, Hardline's on one side of the park, the rest of the park's open. Come and ride and just watch it as you're going down. You can choose how you want to do it.
Yeah, it's again simple. I feel it's simple.
Or even like that Enduro World Cup, like, I think for the first time ever, we just pitched this idea of a guided trail ride that followed, well, I can't remember what we called it. It was the Hecklefest. It was really cool. So we had like Hecklefest t-shirts. People signed up to the trail ride. It was like super low cost. They got a guide for the day. And that guide just rode around with them to all the stages. So we had like 50 people in this group. And one of our staff, Chris, who's epic at that kind of thing anyway, he just rode the Hecklefest crew around. And they had megaphones and all sorts of shit. Those guys had the best day ever. And it was so basic. It was just like taking them on a trail ride so they could go watch the World Cup. And I think if they did more shit like that at a world level, it would be really cool.
Well, that's the whole like selling an experience.
Yeah.
Sell a package. Like, okay, this is what you get.
We just
from this
think what
package.
you would want as a rider. It's like, if I'm going to a World Cup, what do I want? Or, an enduro, what do I want? I want to see all the stages. I don't want to have to worry about working out where to go. I don't know the venue, so I don't know how to ride to here or here. I just want to have a great day on my bike. At the end of it, hey, I'd love to stop at a bar on the hill just near the finish where we can watch it all and have a couple of beers. Like, just think what you would want to do at an event, and then you create that for people. And I think that's the best way to do it.
I guess people just don't see that. But I don't get how you don't see what you want.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
That's what it's like. You rock up somewhere. It's like, you know how like people, I was listening to this thing and they talk about how like malls work. Like, why do malls work? Because they have everything there.
Exactly.
You want clothes, you want entertainment, you want this. They've just got everything.
Job done.
Yeah, job done. Stop worrying.
But I think people think that the event, like the actual race, is the main part of the event. Whereas from our perspective, it's like the race is the reason people are going. Like, that's the motivator to go to the venue. The race is a tiny part of the event. Like, you look at Hardline, for example, that thing's done in 3 hours. Like, we're going to have a seating day, so there's another 3-hour block, but people aren't necessarily coming for the 3 hours. They're coming to have a great time. So Hardline is part of that great time, but we want to keep them for a week. Yeah. So we've got to give them a week of fun shit to do. That's easy. Like, it's not hard. We know what people enjoy doing on their bikes.
But even when you bring people in, like, I never understood at Threadbow they'd have the whip off, and you've just got all these people in the one spot, and then as soon as it's done, they're like, all right, we're going to cross here now, go into this bar, and then everyone just spreads and goes. Yep. Like, people go home, people get over it. I'm like, put a DJ up on top of that tabletop. Yeah. As soon as have him playing while they're doing whips.
Stoke Wizard.
Stoke Wizard. Put him on the tabletop. Have him playing while they're doing whips. As soon as they've done the last whip, have just a big party there.
Have your prezos there.
Have your prezos there. Like, it's
little stuff.
If you can create a group of a lot of people, give them stuff to do. As soon as you try and herd them somewhere else, people, I'm going home. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm this. I'm that. It's like,
and it's even just the way you put together the venue. Like, I only went to one World Cup this year, Lenzerheide. Venue was pretty good, but talking to a bunch of other people, I think Darcy Coots was saying like Val Nord was just a terrible pit space from his perspective, but like, literally the thing I'm doing the last few weekends is sitting in a 20-ton machine while the Hardline crew aren't using it to build a new event venue. Like, we've got a pretty good event venue, but we want to make it way better. Yeah. So like, expo space leads straight into the finish bowl. You've got space for bars and entertainment and everything else. You're not stuck off in the middle of a car park with your team pits, or your expo is not like in 57 different places. Like, it's all designed properly so people flow through the venue and up onto the course. Like,
the finish should be in the pits. Like, you finish and there's your tent right there.
Yeah, and we've got a VIP tent. We're going to have a rooftop bar on that thing. Like, it's at the finish line. So it has to be. Like, if you want people to be there, you know, as a VIP, some of them paying, like, you got to put them on the finish line, and they got to have the best view. Like, they need to see that finish jump. They need to have the expo and everything all around them. Like, they're not just there for the event. You know, they're not just there for the race. Yeah, they're there for the experience at the end of the day.
And like, I always think this, because imagine if you had like a massive act, like people would come there for the act. Like, oh, Taylor Swift's playing at 4:30. Like, imagine how many people would come to that and you're like, oh shit, downhill.
Yeah.
And I think,
and we've thought about that. It's like, who can we get on board? There's a few like big DJs and things that are really into riding. So we're doing a bit of work in that space. But I think that's the next one for us, is like, bring a big act into that little microcosm. And
I think that's how you bring new fans in.
Yeah.
Because they'll come to him and then see that and be like, holy shit, this is cool.
Yeah, and just other, like, obviously Maydena too with logistics. Like, we got buses that are, I think we're going to launch that product this week, but you'll be able to bus in and out of Hobart. So there'll be a couple of different bus times, so you can just jump on. You can have a beer at 10 in the venue and then bus home. Like, little things like that.
Yeah, but it's massive.
Yeah, it just makes hopefully a big difference to people in Hobart who are like, oh, you know, it's quite it's an hour and a half, but I don't have a car, or the kids want to come out and whatever. So I think by doing that, hopefully that kind of solves a few.
Think how fun that bus would be going home after.
It's a bit wild.
I'd love to hop on a party bus with 56 of my mates or whatever,
stinky
and cruise
back, dudes. yeah, I won't be on that bus.
I was going to say I'm probably going to bring my van and just camp in that thing, not have to catch the bus home.
Yeah, no, I would do that.
Have you had any pushback from people and like doing these big events and creating what you are creating? Are people pushing back, or are people pretty good about it?
Oh, look, everyone has an opinion, and you definitely cop a bit of hate along the way, for sure. Not heaps of pushback. Like, we have issues like anyone would with just bureaucracy and other things, trying to get things done, but generally pretty good. From a mountain bike community point of view, generally really good. There's a bit of niggliness around Tassie in particular. Like, I've been around for a long time, and some people, very small elements of the community, don't like me for whatever reason. I think, I don't know, maybe some of it's tall poppy. Like, they think that I'm just kind of a rich kid who's got all this money and doing all these things and just charging people a fortune to come and ride their bikes and whatever else. It's this very small segment of the community, but you get a bunch of it. Like anyone does. Like we're relatively public facing now and we have a pretty big bike park. So we do get a bit of attention, but generally it's really positive, to be honest. But as you know, like you get your haters. Some days they get you down, but for the most part,
I do know that as
good.
well. When you're in small town environment and you start to win in a certain way, I guess it's a reflection of them not winning. So they just
there's a bit of that, and I guess they think you're winning, but and look, I'm winning for sure. Like, but it's fucking hard work. Yeah, I guess you just remind yourself, like, I don't know, you could do a week in my shoes at the end of the day, like,
or even if you want to,
that's it. Like, it's not all beer and Skittles. Like, there's a whole lot of hard work and a lot of grind and a lot of stress and everything else. But no, most people are really good. There's a couple of people left in the town that are not supportive, but same with Derby or anywhere else. Like, the overwhelming response from the community, even the non-riders, is like, this is really cool. It's brought the community alive. It's not disruptive. We have a couple of big events a year. Otherwise, the town just continues on. House prices have quadrupled or whatever since we started. Like, it's a better place. It's definitely a better place.
Do you think, because you're talking about you want to do Enduro again, 24, do you have an idea if you do a downhill as well, or just you want to stick to your in-house events, or would you try and get World Cup?
I would love a downhill, particularly now that Enduro has moved to a place where I'm a bit less excited about it. Like, I think as an Enduro venue, we have everything we need, and the feedback from Warner Brothers, from the athletes, and even directly with the athletes, was that we were one of the favourite venues that's happened over the last several years. So people want to come back, and I want to facilitate that because I think we have a real genuine place in the calendar. Like, the whole venue was built around Enduro ultimately, more than it is downhill. We have such a variety of really fun trails. Like, we used probably a quarter of the trails that I wanted to use for the Enduro World Cup. And then there's 60 other trails, but it's so hard to pick a course. Like, I captain called the course, so I just wanted to do it. But in doing that, like, it was really hard to put that together. So we want another go at it so we can show more stuff. But I want a downhill for sure. The town probably needs a little more infrastructure development, and talking with Chris Ball and the crew, like, they're keen, but they want to see some more development around the town. It is a tiny town, as you know, but I think we can do it. We're going to put something together after Hardline, because Hardline, we've got some pretty unique things going on with, like, pop-up camping arrangements and buses, and we're really trying to dial in. Like, we've got to get 10,000 people into this venue in a town of 100 people. Like, it's a heavy lift, but we've got some really good plans around that, and there's some doubts that, we can facilitate that level of event in the town. So we're easily going to prove all those doubters wrong. But I think once we've done that, then we can start opening that dialogue of, like, from my perspective, as I said earlier, Australia and New Zealand need a place at the World Cup table. Maybe it's not every year, but I'd like to see the series open every year in the Southern Hemisphere.
And I don't know why not, because it's perfect. Like, the weather.
The weather's great.
Like, why are you going to Mont Saint Anne when it's snowing when you could be in Australia in
Start
March?
in March. Yeah, that's it. Like, I think most of the riders want a slightly longer series. Maybe teams at the moment, not so much. But hey, that's going to improve. But
I think if it's run well, though, it's run well. Like, if it makes sense and you come to New Zealand for maybe one race, maybe two, maybe Australia for one or two, and it's in March when there's not much happening back in Europe.
Well, they want to come, right? Like, they're all here already. And that was the reason that we pitched the Hardline date when we did. Because, like, you look at the whole date calendar, it's like they're coming down for proving grounds in New Zealand if you're a free rider. They're coming down for Cannonball. Like, they've been getting world level races for years now. Like, they do a great job of dragging those races in. And
they love coming here. They're like on a holiday in Australia in March. Yeah. Why would you want to stay in Europe?
There's a bunch doing New Zealand nationals. They're all coming. Like, a lot of those crew, like Bernard Kerr and those guys, have been hanging out in New Zealand for years. Like, they're all down here. They want to do stuff and they want to race. Like, you look at, like, we hosted the Syndicate a couple of years ago, last year, and they came down. They were doing all kinds of stuff. Like, they were in New Zealand doing stuff. They were racing. They came to us. Like, they actually want to race. Like, they really want to race. And talking to that crew, like, a lot of them are coming back.
Just ride different tracks as well.
Yeah.
Like, that to me, I like to go somewhere. I don't care as much about, like, the riding as much as riding something new that's exciting and
that's back to that whole thing of, like, put it somewhere cool where it's not just the riding. Like, and as a racer, surely when you go into a World Cup, the race bit is part of it, but the whole experience is important too. Like, if you're in a town that, I don't know, is not that cool and the course is not that cool, and you feel like, hey, maybe they're just here because these guys had the hosting fees and costs, and there are better venues that just couldn't afford to do it anymore. Like that's my fear, and particularly in Australia, like there's been a big shift with the national championships and things where they are just going to government now, and they're saying, you know, they're not even talking to venues. They go straight to a government, usually events corporation with the government, and say, hey, do you want to bid for national championships? A government will say, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars, and then they worry about the venue later. So you're getting these states that are buying in because they've got bigger budgets, and you're not getting the best venues.
No.
So,
and then is that because what happened? You know how they doubled up on Cannonball. Do you know exactly how that kind of came about?
It was the damage to the shuttle road at Awabba, as far as I'm aware. Like Awabba had the, and again, don't quote me on it, I might be wrong, but from a pretty reliable source within Oz Cycling, Awabba got damaged by the floods, and basically they weren't ready to host. So they needed a last minute event. Events New South Wales, or whatever the government organisation is, they had the money already funded for a national championship. So the logical thing was to go to Cannonball because it was already there.
Yeah.
Similar to the national series, they've just piggybacked that on top of Cannonball for this year.
Yeah, I see that. It frustrates me because I just see how much that everyone puts in it for Cannonball and how it's grown to what it is. And I feel like the national team coming and piggybacking off that, it's like, come on, like we've built this.
Totally,
and then you've kind of just, we're just going to throw a national title on it, and then it's kind of ours as well. I'm just like,
yeah, and look, to be honest, like from a venue point of view, the dollars don't make sense for what Oz Cycling are trying to do with the national level events now. Like, I shouldn't say exactly what it is, but they take a very big percentage of your entry fee to host an event. And we've been really open with them. Like, as a venue, that doesn't work. Like, you're not going to see the best venues. You don't need that level of money to, you know, have your attendance at the event. It doesn't make sense.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's what sort of ruled us out of that space. Like,
What's been the biggest thing, or even just to say the easier thing of just doing events in-house? It's just that peace of mind that you don't have someone over your shoulder, you don't have someone trying to take it, like,
so much easier. But look, yes and no. Like, we've used events and other people's events to help grow awareness for the park. So particularly like national enduro champs, national downhill cross country champs.
It brings eyeballs.
Bringing eyeballs to the park. And then from there we moved up, and it's kind of a process too. Like, if we'd gone to, or Red Bull kind of came to us, but that conversation wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had an Enduro World Cup. And if we hadn't had the national championships, we wouldn't have got the Enduro World Cup. So it's kind of that process. You kind of have to play the game and work your way up to it. But yeah, it is much nicer doing our own stuff. And the Red Bull thing, we have a lot of flexibility with what we're doing. So it is very much a Red Bull Hardline event, but we've got a lot of creative license to really bring that event alive, which is awesome. We wouldn't have done it if we felt like it was going to be just another event.
That's the thing, I guess, if they come like, all right, we're going to do this, but you go sit over there and we'll deal with all this. It'd just be a bit frustrating in a way.
Honestly, the World Cup was the hard one because,
that's how it felt.
Oh, look, we did all the cool shit. So we kind of did everything around the event, but we didn't actually have a great deal of control over the event. And that's okay. And look, we tried to work as closely as we could with the organizer, and it actually worked pretty well. But no one knows our venue like we know our venue. And we've got such a good team that it's like, we have everyone we need to do this. Like, rather than just hitting walls and running up against people and things the whole time, like, it's often easier if you just do it yourself and just get it all done. So, no, look, Enduro Jam's a big one for us, early December.
How many events do you have a year now, like big events?
We're trying to scale back a bit, to be honest. Gravity Fest was sort of, we parked that. We weren't going to do anything with it. So we launched Gravity Fest back in 2018, not long after the park opened. It was kind of our Cannonball / Crankworks style event, and we were going to grow that out as more of a downhill focused event. We decided to park that over COVID, and we never really brought it back alive. But we'd always said, look, if we find something to build into this event to make it, you know, unique and bigger, then we'll bring it back. And that was where the Hardline thing came online. But Enduro Jam's our biggest in-house event. So that's a enduro focused event, as many laps as you want all day. Really cool format, like great for pros, great for punters. Like, we're going to keep growing out that event and looking at bringing that other event into other bike parks that we're developing and managing, not just here but overseas. So hopefully Enduro Jam becomes a big thing around the place. But other than that, look, we'll look at another World Cup for sure. Hardline's with us for 3 years, but both Red Bull and the government.
You signed for 3 years, so
Yeah. So
Did you want to do that? Like, if we're going to put this amount of money,
absolutely,
effort, time,
yeah,
we're locking in.
And look, to be honest, like Red Bull's investing a lot in the venue with us. Like we're investing a lot too to allow us to host an event that big. But the government want that surety as well. Like we got them to jump on board. They put in nearly $500,000 a year into that event, which look, we could have probably scratched by without them, but huge help to get that online as well. But look, we're looking beyond 3 years. Absolutely. Red Bull have already said, well, we've been in Wales for 10 years. We'd love to do the same thing here.
It's crazy to think that when you say it's been around for 10 years.
Well, 9 years. This is their 10th, right? But yeah, you don't realize. Like I look back through a lot of the old footage recently. I was like, holy shit, this thing's evolved, and you kind of forget how long it's been around.
Yeah, it makes me feel old when you go,
dude.
Yeah, you're like, 10 years ago. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah. Yeah, it's wild. Actually, I was talking to Rory Cunningham about Hardline, and I totally forgot that he'd raced. I think he's actually won one. He's like, dude, I've
Did
raced.
he win a Hardline?
Yeah, early on. Yeah.
I definitely remember him on the podium for sure.
Yeah, because we were chatting about it. I was like, oh, shit, sorry. I totally forgot.
You actually just forget that stuff's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, man. I was going to ask you as well, what's been going on with all the logging that's super close to you guys? Because you said obviously you brought a bit of land off the loggers, but obviously it still backs onto more that they own.
Yeah. So to be clear, the land we bought at the bottom was private timber plantation. The issues we have currently are all with the state-based logging agency, Sustainable Timber Tasmania. We don't operate on their land with any of our trails. So the trails are all with Parks and Wildlife or privately owned. But what they're doing is they're logging the border of our shuttle road. So their argument is it's not really part of your operation. My argument from a purely business point of view is you're detracting from the experience we provide our guests. Like this is stunning rainforest, big man ferns, massive trees. Like that is part of the experience. With us, you're on the uplift as much as you're riding for a lot of people. So it's all part of it. I mean, I have a personal issue with it from a conservation point of view and just a general economics point of view. Like they're not making any money out of chopping those trees down. They lose money on it. So it just seems nonsensical to me that you've got this town that's moving from a logging hydro kind of town into now being a tourist town, and we're just smashing down the forest that. And the reason people like Red Bull come to us is like, hey, you've got great trails. You've got the ability to build what we want you to build. But they're also coming for the environment. Like those broadcast guys are on the hill like, holy shit, this is going to make the most amazing broadcast. Like it is the most epic wilderness environment. And we're just gradually destroying it around the place. Like the park is fine, but let's not fuck the town, the amenity around the town, because that's why people are coming.
Do you reckon it's almost like spitefulness that
it's spiteful now? Yeah. Look, to be totally clear, I think that agency is spiteful now. Like they are deliberately pulling coops online around the park just to piss us off. Like the other day, I was talking to the Premier about it, and I was arguing that they needed to leave a tree buffer, which they're supposed to do for a tourism asset along the side of the road. Like I don't agree with the logging at all of the old growth forest personally, but it's like at the very least, like leave the visual amenity so you're not detracting from what we're providing our guests. They got word that I was arguing with the Premier about this visual buffer. So they went in when we were closed the day after, moved all their logging equipment in, smashed the buffer, packed up and left so that it was too late for there to be a political intervention about the buffer. So they just they smashed the buffer zone down and then just left. Like it didn't work for them operationally. It would have been a massive pain in the ass, but they're just making a point. Like they just smashed all the trees down and just left.
Yeah,
so
you piss someone off and they, for whatever reason.
Well, they just knew that I was probably going to get some traction politically and they would have to leave the buffer. So before I could get political traction, they went in and smashed it. So look, there's a lot of plantation around there, like Bright. No problem with pine plantation. Great. We've all got to wipe our asses on something. We need paper. Like pine plantation, not an issue at all. But the thing with these forests that they're logging now is that they're like 80 to 100 years old, minimum. They've never been clear felled. Like they've selectively taken out trees, but they've never knocked the thing to the ground. And now they come in and just knock it to the ground. It's like you've got Tasmanian devils, you've got quolls, you've got all sorts of wildlife in there, and they're just decimated.
Yeah. It's one of the most picturesque places in the entire world.
Absolutely.
And it's like people are coming here more than ever
to
experience it, and then you're like, all right, fuck you, we're going to cut it all down.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, even like you did say, right, obviously pine plantation, but it is a similar thing where it's they've got to see the value that mountain biking and paragliding has brought into that town. And
Totally.
it's like, why don't we just give you this little sliver?
Cut that bit out.
Cut this little bit out. Just let the trees grow. Let the tracks mature.
Yeah.
Don't have to redo it every year. And just see if more people come, more money flows, like everything. Because you guarantee.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like we get that argument, the counter argument. Rotorua is used as an example. It's like, well, look in Rotorua, they clear fell the whole place. It makes no difference. The riders don't care. I'm like, but if you've actually ridden Rotorua, the trails suck out in the open. Like the soil's terrible because it's in the sun. It looks shit house. Like it is so much nicer to be in the native forest. Like people do care. They're just.
But how do you say that they come? Like, of course they come back. But would more come if you didn't do it?
The argument,
and would the trails be better?
Yeah.
It's like you can only do that by not cutting them down for X amount of years.
And look, almost all our marketing is built around the environment around the park. Like, you know, you look at any of the content on our socials, we're not showing you big logged areas. Like we're showing you big man ferns and trees. And that's why people are coming. And that's my argument. It's like Tasmania is so well positioned to have this whole new tourism economy around nature-based tourism and adventure tourism. Like, why can't we be like a Queenstown where Hobart has all these really cool adventure activities and people are out in the wilderness? Like that's what we should be doing.
Well, that's Tasmania. Tasmania is...
That's what we are.
It's a tourism destination. Come here and look at stuff and enjoy it and ride around and see stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And a huge part of that is the wilderness. So I'm like, look, keep your plantation, all good. But the native stuff, just fucking leave it alone.
Yeah.
Like it's silly. It doesn't make any sense. And look, to be honest, a lot of it's just going to wood chips. Like they get a few floorboards out of it, but most of it's either left on the ground or turned into wood chips. Like it's a political issue where I think you see like WA and Victoria have both stopped old growth logging. I just don't think they feel that they don't have the voter base yet to do it. I think it'll happen one day, hopefully in my lifetime. I'm pushing pretty hard to try and do what I can to make it a reality. Yeah, and it's not like we don't hate the logging industry. I'm not trying to ruin the jobs of the logging industry. It's like just let's be smart about this. Like we need specialty timber to make chairs and boats and other things. Like let them take the odd tree out, like put a higher value on it. Let them extract the timber they need to do this stuff. Like, don't just smash it on the ground and sell it for pennies on the dollar because they can't get their certification. Like, they need the global certification to be able to sell it to proper purposes, that FSC, Forest Stewardship certification.
Yeah.
They can't get it. They keep failing because they're too shit at what they do at the end of the day. So, no, it's a constant source of frustration, to be honest.
Are you feeling like there is some, like, it's going in the right direction in some ways, or is it all a bit...
It is, and then you just hit another political brick wall. Like, we get a lot of interest from the professional riders and things. Like, a lot of them have actually written to the government, copied us in, like, really high-level riders saying, look, this sucks. What are you guys doing? Like, the interest is growing and the awareness of it is growing. Like, we're in a difficult space politically where, like, we have the government funding massive events for us. And then in the same breath, like, I'm asking them for that funding while I'm publicly criticizing the way they do things. Like it's a tough line to walk.
That's
where
weird
it is
double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yep. And it's like I don't mince my words. Like I'll tell them what I really think, but equally, like sometimes you'd have to try and be a little bit diplomatic. It's like, look, we're bringing these massive events to you guys. It has a huge impact on the region. The park brings in like 25 million plus a year into the local economy. Like we're doing things, but we need you guys to just think a little better about the way you manage the forests, because otherwise all that money we're bringing into the economy starts to get jeopardized if you just keep knocking the place down. So,
well, that's what I mean. Like, surely they could see that it's like, again, you're selling this package. Make the package as good as possible is going to be beneficial for the both of you, not just one of you. And I guess they're just seeing it as it's just beneficial for you.
Yeah, well, even our argument is like, you've got all this land you could log. Like personally, and I'm very open with them, I don't support you logging the old growth forest at all. But why do it like right in the town? Like you don't even need to be having these arguments. You could be doing it way the fuck over there and we won't even know about it. But instead you're like bringing it right up against our operation just to make a point. Like that organization loves to create conflict, to be honest. Like that's their thing. So it is frustrating, but it comes back to Burnham. Like they were trying to do all the logging over the EWS and it created the EDR, such a big fuss publicly that they have to back away, and now they've come back and done it. But we're getting there
just
slowly
like
but surely.
Shit for the sake
they
of
were
stirring shit. Just let's make.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. Yeah, it really is.
And I guess I've dealt with not the same as that. Obviously, Bright is a plantation.
Yeah,
but it's still you're trying to make things better.
Yep.
And then when everything's getting cut down every few years, you're just like, I just got, like, I think I talked to you about this and I was like, I don't think you can have a successful mountain bike park in an active plantation.
It's hard.
It just doesn't.
I mean, we did a lot of strategic work in Bright. We've done 2 strategic plans for the trail network. The first one sort of superseded now. We did another one recently, and that's looking at trying to program in trail works so that they can happen in the freshly felled areas. So the way it's sitting right now, there is actually an opportunity to get going soon and build a bunch of stuff that's there for, 20 odd years, which that's fine. That works.
But even though, you just, I don't know, this is me being picky. You go to Canada or something, these huge pine trees. Like,
I would much rather.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It creates an experience that goes with the trail network, just like you're saying in Maydena, like these huge trees create an atmosphere and a feeling, and like you're trying to create that. If you're going through cut down pine trees, you're like,
well, we're going into the forest, right? Like, I don't know why you ride your bike, but for me personally, one of the best things about riding a bike, and this is why I do it early in the morning when no one's around, or late at night when no one's around, up in Maydena, and the sun's nice, it's shining through the trees, you're just pedaling along. It just resets things in my head. Like, it's this busy, stressful kind of day, and you're just cracking the shits about everything. You just get on your bike, go for a ride. You feel so much better. I wouldn't feel that if I was not the same, if I was out in this clear felled, shitty space. Like, it's about, it sounds cheesy, but the birds tweeting and the light coming through the trees and the ferns coming over you. And it's a pretty special kind of experience. And you just don't get that in that clear felled kind of environment. Like, you're there to ride. You're not there to have that whole experience, which I think for me is part of it. Definitely. And like you say, Canada's awesome. There's big towering pines and like wild rivers, and it's fucking cool.
Soil's different. It becomes loam.
That
like,
Canadian loam.
That's what I mean. Like, that gets created through keeping the trees there, not churning them over. Like, there's something we can't have because of the logging constantly.
Yeah, maybe we will. The tides are turning a little bit. I feel like maybe there's an opportunity.
I'm just
there.
waiting.
Yeah, just wait. Yeah.
I'm in the wings. As soon as they just sell it or change it, it's like, because I wanted to do I wanted to do heaps of work there.
Yeah.
And it just got frustrating because I was like, you're trying, like, you know all about it. You're trying to push shit uphill, and it's just, obviously you benefit out of it for a business, but I just want a better tracks
you just want
to
cool
ride.
trails to ride.
Yeah,
right?
ride and train. Obviously that's was part of my job, but we all just want the same thing. Yeah. We just need to work together and communicate and actually make it.
But like you say, I mean, maybe one day the ultimate dream would be if that site just got excised and managed for mountain biking. Like, it's hard. There is, like, knowing the back end of it. I know there's a whole bunch of legislation around the way, because it's, I believe Bright's the same, but most of that plantation land is government owned. It's on a long-term lease to the plantations, and there's this thing,
100-year lease.
Basically. But there's a thing called the VPC, Victorian Plantations Corporations Act or something, but they're actually not allowed to do anything that doesn't focus on plantation for that site. So there is a bit of bureaucracy that kind of needs to get knocked on the head before you could really progress some of that stuff. Because we tried, and it's like, no, you can't do this. It contravenes the blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you can. You just fucking rezone the land. Like,
if there's ways.
There's
ways
and
to
it's
do
like
it.
Life in general. Like, you got to know which wall to smash through, which wall to climb over, and which wall you're better off just taking a different detour and doing it differently. But I think that's one of the ones you got to fucking smash through it. It's like,
it's just when it gets that loud with money and how much money that mountain biking is bringing into Bright, which is already bringing heaps. It's just going to get to a point where it just gets too noisy that they're like, okay, we'll change now. Yeah. The old ways kind of gone, the new ways here. This is what it is now.
And I don't know, it's probably not public knowledge, but I can talk briefly. We looked at a few other sites for the council and the Alpine community plantations up there to see what their alternative options were, like long term. To be honest, like, Mystic is the best place for it. There's a reason people are building there. Yeah. There's a couple of other opportunities around Porapunka and things, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think you probably built some stuff up there.
Have you ridden that?
No.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, I need to go have a look. I got to go up there again soon. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, and the same thing, like, we did a bunch of work down in Wollongong, and they're like, oh, we really want to move the trails away from Mount Kira. I'm like, but it fucking interfaces with the community. Like, that's where people want to be. If you put the mountain bikes in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, no one's going to go there. They're just going to keep building their illegal trails where they want them. Like, it doesn't always work. Like, there's constraints, environmental, social, cultural, etc. But where you can, you got to bring the bikes into the town.
Yeah, I fully 100% agree. And I know, like you say, even like Porapunka would be good, but still it's not Bright.
No, that's the thing. Bright's the hub, and you want to be able to, like, cruise down to Bright Brewery at the end of the day. You want to be able to ride from your accommodation. Like, it's so nice to be able to just leave the car. Like, I'm in Maydena, I just park my car, don't touch it. if I'm there for 2 weeks straight, my car just sits there for 2 weeks straight. I ride to the river, I ride the park, I ride home.
That's a feeling that I definitely miss about being in Bright. Is I just would go to my shed, put my gear on, go out my back gate that goes on a rail trail, ride a rail trail all the way to a mountain bike park, ride a mountain bike park for 2 hours, and then ride home.
Yeah.
Go for a swim, go to the brewery, have a swim, have a beer, ride home. Like it's dreamy. This is not bad.
Yeah.
This is not bad at all. But
where do you ride here? In the Boomers, Nerang, I suppose.
Boomers, Nerang, Ilambah. I've rode out there a few times from the head right, but you got to go on ride days, and it's just hard. There's like 2 fences you got to go through, and it's like, you know, when you ride in Europe and you ride a chairlift that's no one's on, and you ride some of the best tracks in the world, and you can do 10 laps in an hour, and then you come back and you're sitting in a trooper going up a road that you have to stop 5 times, and you're just like,
I'd been to Europe for a while, so I mean, I've ridden there heaps, but going back this year, it's like, this place is pretty damn good. Like, there's just little resorts everywhere, trails everywhere. It's kind of low key up in the mountains, but it's cool.
Have you been to Morjan?
No, it was all shut when we were there.
Yeah,
so we ended up going into Valais. We didn't do much resort riding because it was all still opening. So we did a bunch of shuttles in that Valais kind of Verbier region, and then we kind of went across. The kids got sick, so I had to head home early, but ended up down at Finale. Finale is magic.
Oh, you go so many places there, and you go, oh, they get it.
Yeah,
They get it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, we're talking about political stuff and everything. I know we've both got a friend that's currently on a massive ride of a political thing, Annie Ford.
Yeah.
You're good friends with her.
Yeah.
And you see her as being an absolute legend doing where'd she go from Cockle Creek in Tassie?
Yeah, she's gnarly.
Up to, where's she finishing at?
Is it Queensland? I think.
I know it's in Queensland, but I'm not sure
specifically. And then she's going to ride back. So Annie's doing it for seismic blasting, as I understand, and she's trying to make a point around the damage that does to the environment and for surfing and other things. So she does these massive rides, and she's a massive downhill rides. She's pretty gnarly.
Well, she's got the world record for most elevation descended in 24 hours. Anyone,
male or female. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Reese and I do that 24-hour charity ride at Maydena. Obviously, different context, to be fair to us. Like, there's no way you could do that many laps there. It just doesn't work. But like, we're shattered. Like, last year we did 27 laps non-stop of the 820 of vertical at Maydena, and that is hard work. And I can't remember how, like, her vertical was insane. It's like 40,000 meters
something
or something
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts.
What do you reckon it is about her that's just like, all right, I'm just going to go out and do something that's just so far out there, but like got a good cause behind it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's done 1 or 2 of them, and then you kind of you learn that your limits are probably a little different than what you realised. I mean, we even got that with the first charity ride. Like, we do it for kids' cancer. So we raised 20,000 last year, but the first year we did 15 hours, and I was like, oh, that's enough. Look, let's just not. We've never done this thing before. Just me and Reese do it till we know what it's like, and then we'll bring some other people along for the ride. 15 hours, we're like, oh, shit, that was hard. And then the next year, it's like, oh, we'll go for 24. We talked about 36, and it's like, no, let's just go for 30 laps. So 30 laps is the goal for this year. But again, I think same with Annie, you just kind of, and her shit's on another level, to be clear, but you kind of just get to a point and you're like, well, I didn't think I could do that. And then you do it, and you're like, well, I wonder what else I could do. And then you kind of keep building on that. And I think for her, she's just kept going. She's got a really good base fitness, and she's motivated, and she's doing
It's pretty
cool
cool,
stuff.
eh?
Yeah.
I think, like you said, you doubt what you're capable of,
100%.
and then people will reinforce that into you, and it'll create this idea that like, oh, I can't really do that.
And people do. Like, you get that all the time with everything that I've tried to do over the years. There's always people that, well-meaning most of the time, like, oh, don't leave your job. Why would you do that? Or that won't work out. Like, it'll never work out. That's a crazy idea.
It's fuel, like, man. It's fuel.
Yeah,
Use it as fuel. Like, every time someone doubts you, I always say it's like gasoline.
Oh, it's
like
massive fuel. It's even the hardline thing. Like, even just the internet banter about, they won't get the riders down there. It's like, well, fucking believe me, this rider list is insane. And, they won't be able to build a hardline course. It's like, just wait and see.
But how good's that when you get those people that do doubt you? I use it as fuel, man. I love when people say you can't do something because it's like, watch this. Yeah. And then you channel that and build on that.
No, it's funny because my team now understands it. Like, they'll see it in me. And Reese in particular is like, yeah, I know what's going on here. You see that, you get that bit of banter from the haters, and he's like, "Oh, look out!"
Yeah, here we go. But it's good, man. Like, I think it's epic if you channel it into the right.
Yeah, you got to channel it, and I think it's hard. Like, sometimes I can get a little lost in the noise. It's like there's just too many things going on, but it does fuel you. Absolutely. Like you don't want too much of it. Kind of brings you down, but
just enough.
Just enough. Like there's a level of shittiness in life that I think motivates you. It's good.
But I think like I guarantee Annie's probably in stages on that ride where she's hurting. She doesn't want to be there. She hates every second of this. And you go into some thought in your brain of someone going, oh, no, there's no way you can do this. And I think when you think that, you're like, I don't want that person to be right. I want to be right. So then you channel that and then use it.
And she said it a bunch. She's like, you just kind of get to a point and you think you've got to the limit. You're like, oh, I'm going to ride 200 Ks today. You get to 200 and you're like, I probably got a little bit more in me. And you go a little bit more and you're like, well, you know, it's not dark yet. I'll just keep going. So it's that thing where you kind of set these limits on yourself and then just stop. Or do you set the limit and then just try and push past it every time? I think she's a good example of that. Absolutely.
I think that's a great lesson how I came up here once and I wanted to run a marathon. I've never run more than 10 Ks before. I was like, I'm going to run a marathon. And I talked to my friends and they're like, you got to train, blah, blah, blah. I need months, blah, blah, blah. Like kind of, and got in my own head. Anyway, I got up to Queensland. I was like, when I get to Queensland, I'm going to run a marathon. No reason, no race, no nothing. And I started running it. And like you say, you just go, I'll just get to 10 Ks. And you get to 10, you're like, oh, I'm still okay. Get to 20 Ks. And I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I walk for a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
I walk the last however many Ks. And I think that's like what you're saying is like set goals. And if you get to them, it gets hard. Just keep walking and like walk through that hard patch and then, okay, I can run again and then start running again. But don't just stop and get off the ride. Like don't just stop and go, oh, okay, I'm done. Because you don't know how much further you can go.
No, and look, that's life too, right? Like I think I've fallen into that trap quite a few times. You think, so people will say to you, oh, you've made it. Like firstly, they have no fucking idea what's going on. But secondly, like I used to think, oh, if I do this, I've made it. Or I've done this, I made it. I mean, that was like a 20-year-old mindset, I suppose, where you're kind of like, oh, if I just get to this point, if I get that car, or if I get this thing or that house, or that's made it. But then you realize like there is no fucking made it. Like no one's made it. They're making it. Like,
and you don't want to make it.
No, exactly. Like what are you going to do if you make it? Like just
done.
Sit back.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I've made it. High point of my life. I'm just going to sit in this for how long?
Yeah. And that's the same sort of argument around that kind of working and retirement kind of thing. It's like, I don't want to retire. Like I never want to retire. I want to work differently as I get older for sure, but I don't want to fucking retire.
I've got I read this last night. And I thought it was really cool. It's kind of like what we're talking about here. It goes, achieving a goal by itself will never make us happy in the long term. It's who we become as we overcome the obstacles necessary to achieve those goals that can give you the deepest and most long-lasting sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's not the goal. It's
even
who you
like transform into why you were trying to achieve the goal.
But you forget. I mean, even recently when we had that World Cup, I'd kind of put everything into this World Cup, like up on the hill with the guys, doing all my other day jobs, but just trying to get everything dialed. Get to the end of the World Cup, you just hit this fucking hollow. You're like, oh man, I'm so tired. But I kind of hit the goal, and all I was focused on was the goal of like nailing this World Cup event. Now what the fuck are we going to do? Like you almost hit a bit of a low point in your life. You're like, everything's amazing. We just knocked this thing out of the park, but I need something else to focus on. Like there's no end point. Like it's just the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah. But you need that. Like if you didn't have the next thing, what do you do?
I think it's important that everyone has something, some version of that. Like it's always going to be different, but you need something to work towards.
I think that's how you see here like a lot of athletes when they retire and they go into alcohol, drugs. And I know when I first went to Europe to race when I was 16, 17, I remember I got back and I went to school and I was like depressed just because I'd been like, Europe, 16, 17-year-old kid racing in front of thousands of people, doing what I love. Imagine the bottom, the finish area, world champs.
Yeah, everyone's cheering. And
back in math class, trying to work out equations. And I'm like,
what am I doing for life?
Yeah. But that was a massive like, okay, I've achieved this goal.
And that's where it's so hard. I think you see, and someone like Nathan Rennie's been pretty public about it. Like a lot of those athletes have massive battles and you need something else. Like you can't just fall off a cliff at the end of your career. Like there's got to be something to move on to.
My biggest thing, I think, is, okay, you've got all this knowledge, experience, skill, pass that on. Give that to someone. Like give that to an up-and-coming kid. Give that to someone that then can use it and better themselves.
And that's like a legacy thing too. Like, I mean, legacy is a bit of an ego thing at the end of the day, but still it's important that you're imparting and leaving something. And it's like if you're helping.
I think it is an ego thing, but it's just how you balance it. And because I remember when Sam and Troy were racing together and Troy was obviously slower than Sam.
Yeah.
I think they went to Threadboat and Troy beat Sam by 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then they stopped riding together.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, I remember seeing that. I was like, I never want that to be my reality.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I used to go to Ollie Davis's house in the morning after the gym, and he would be getting ready to go to school.
Yeah.
And we were chatting one morning. I remember it so clearly. We were chatting in the kitchen, and I just joked around like, "Oh, you're getting pretty fast, oh." And he's like, "Oh, you're going to be so annoyed when I'm faster than you." And I just remember I stopped. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to be so happy, hey."
Yeah,
because it's like that's what you want. You want them to go past where you've ever been.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's hard too, though. I suppose like you got someone like Sam who's been around for so long, and there's such a persona around Sam in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave up my racing really early on, but it just wasn't for me. I feel like I would have burnt out a little bit of the sport if I'd gone down that pathway. Like now I do way more with mountain biking than I ever would have probably, but yeah, it wasn't for me.
Was there a point when you go, okay, this isn't for me, or was it just kind of continuous, like, I don't want to put as much work in, these guys are X fast, I'm like, I'll just go do this.
My heart wasn't in it at the end of the day. Like I just wasn't training hard enough, and I wasn't falling out of love with riding. I've always ridden. I've never been one of those people who's like on and off and on and off, but it just wasn't really my
Did you feel your relationship, like when you would ride, you would focus on trying to go fast, not have fun? Is that a part of it?
That was definitely part of it. And look, to be honest, I did enjoy the training, like the physical training, not technical training, but I just wasn't really that into it. Like I raced pretty competitively. Like I raced at World Champs, didn't have a great run, like flat tire, injury, whatever else. But it's like that was kind of enough for me. I kind of got to that point. I was like, I don't really want any more out of this. It's not really serving where I want to be. I don't want to be traveling the world on the World Cup circuit. It just like it didn't motivate me. So I mean, it's a cool thing to do. It just wasn't for me personally.
I think that's, like you said there, like that was enough. And
well,
so many people don't.
I feel like I didn't have
enough.
anything to offer it too. Like I feel like now I'm in a position where I've got a lot to offer the mountain bike world. Like we can do lots of things. We can design massive trail destinations. We can help build them. We can facilitate juniors into World Cups. We can run these massive events. Like that's the purpose for me now. Like I can give back something, lots to the sport, I think. And for racing, it just wasn't, I didn't feel I had that.
But I guess that's being self-aware enough to know, okay, this is not.
And I wasn't probably good enough either, to be fair.
But again, I don't think you can ever be good enough if your heart's not in it.
No, well, that's it. And look, I was beating a bunch of those guys. It wasn't, but they had a talent that was, and I had a natural talent and I didn't work that hard on it, but it just wasn't, I just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, again, the self-awareness to go, okay, this is enough. Next. And that's what I was dealing with for the last 3 years was that whole battle of, is this enough?
Yeah.
I'm still, like I said to you, I'm not doing terrible. I'm not doing great.
Yeah, like you could hang in there for longer, but do you want to hang in there for longer? Like,
well, Scott offered me a 2-year deal last year, and I just said, just give me a 1. Like, I don't. That's where I'm at. Like, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then after the first 3 races, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is done. And it was so freeing to accept. Like, it was actually.
Oh, totally.
Everyone was like, oh man, like they almost felt sorry for me. I'm like, I'm happy, man. Like, it's like
a way. Finally made that.
It's a way. But it was funny as well because I went first 3 World Cups, didn't even qualify for, or got really hurt at Leo Gang, had a big crash, and then came home, did some work, was like, what do you want to do? Decided, okay, I'm retiring. Yeah. Went back and raced the next 3. Had the most fun I've had on my bike in so long because there was no pressure
it's
about.
Not there anymore.
Yeah, it's like I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I put all this pressure on myself. Oh, do I want to stay? Do I want to get another year? I need to perform? Blah blah blah. And then I rocked up. I was like, I'm just going to enjoy. If this is it, if this is done, I'm going to enjoy this last little bit of racing. Yeah. And I did, and I thought it was sick. And I was like, how do you carry that mindset into something, even when you are super passionate about it?
Yeah.
Because you want to be concerned about it, but you also want that mindset. It's like, if it doesn't work out, I'll find something else.
I'll find something else.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's been hard for a couple of riders this year. Like you watch Gwyn and Maynena in particular, who were both like talking about retirement, and they just, Gwyn smoked himself in round 1 and Maynena got a couple of flats or whatever happened to him, but didn't have great years. It's like, I think I was talking to someone the other day, Maynena was at Fort William with the whole team, like ready to retire. And then I think he got a flat from memory, you might remember, but something happened and it's like, fuck, now what? Like, I don't want to go out on that. Yeah. So that's the hard one too for guys like that.
Like I know Greg pretty well now, and just I remember chatting with him when I was kind of at the point where I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, and you could see that, and it's this whole like Michael Jordan, Greg Minnaar, like Tiger Woods, best of the best. I'm like, what is enough? Yeah. And how much will you put yourself through hell?
Well, I mean, he had enough years ago from an outsider's point of view.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I'm like, why?
What have you got to prove? Oh, this is like the G Atherton thing the other day. like G was coming to Maydena to do Hardline media. So I was meant to be in the States. I was going to Rampage. The whole thing kind of moved around and he was flying down. And it was like, well, like we saw that drop that he was building and I sent it to the Red Bull guys and I was like, fuck, like this is crazy. Like, I don't know. Hopefully he makes it down. Like, let's just keep the media thing tentative. Don't want to be negative, but like there's a real reality here that he's not going to make that drop. And yeah, he didn't make the drop. It's like, I mean, he's motivated by some weird shit. Like the stuff he does.
After that crash I saw on the ridge line, man, that's got to be probably one of the most like heart wrenching. Just
it's
feels
heavy.
sick in your stomach.
Yeah.
Just like, man.
And look, I'm not dissing it at all. It's incredible what he does, and he's got motivation from a place I don't have.
No, but it's just what's
it's
enough.
like, what have you got to prove now,
Exactly.
dude? Like you've done it. You don't fucking kill yourself. Like none of the community want that from you. Like we've had enough. Like just go and do something else. You got your bike brand, you got your bike park with Dan, and like you don't need to be sending it off 25-meter cliffs. Like we don't. I don't know. That made me really uncomfortable. I was like,
and that's what I was saying to when people come up to me. Oh, they're like bummed about it when I retired. I was like, dude, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because I've realized what enough is.
Yeah.
And backed myself enough to go,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the right decision. Like you said, when you're like, I don't want to do nursing anymore and I want to do this. It's like you back yourself.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to do racing. It's like you back yourself.
Yeah.
And when you actually have that like inner talk where you're like, what do I really want? What does Dean want to do? Not what does my sponsors, what does my family, what does my friends, what does society, what is all this shit?
Yeah. And I think deep down, you know, right? Like,
oh, for sure.
You get to a point and you can fool yourself, definitely. You can be like, oh, you know, I've just such a hard decision. I'm really not sure. You fucking know. Yeah. Like most of the time when it comes to a big catalyst kind of decision like that, you fucking know what you need to do. Like there's no, you're going to have doubts, obviously. But I think for me, like you get to that point, you make the decision and you just forget about the other bit. It's like move on, like dissect it, move on and just focus on what you've committed to. And then it's fine. Like it's not that big a decision and it's just life at the end of the day. Like if you do something that doesn't work out, it was like when we started the bike park, like it was a huge investment. Like we put everything into this thing and there was a very real reality that it wouldn't work, right? Like in fact, the vast majority of people are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like this place is in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing in this town. There's nothing on the hill. You have no outside investment. It's a terrible idea. Like it will never work. And you're like, well, you know, I still need to do it. I've reached that point.
Grab the shovel.
And I think I said to a few people at the time, it's like, look, I've made some money and I've been relatively successful at doing the things that I was doing. I can go out and buy a whole bunch of meaningless things that at the end of the day are not really going to improve my life. I'm going to look cool with a boat and a nice car or something. But does it matter if I lose it? I'm just going to fucking make the money back again. Like you've got to have confidence that, you know, like, yes, I'll probably hit rock bottom. It's going to be terrible, but
that's what we talk about when you're walking for a bit. Okay. You hit rock bottom. That's your walk. And then you get going again, you start running and then you go, okay, next thing. And it's just a cycle,
keeps
man.
going. I was like, look, I've done quite well. And if it falls over, I'll do quite well again. Like you've got to have that belief of like, I don't know. You'll figure it out.
It'll work out.
It'll figure itself out. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, which frustrates some people, but you kind of have to be at the end of the day. It's like, otherwise you never get anywhere. And it's like the risk in that, in terms of starting the bike park was if I didn't do it, there was a far greater risk that I would have to live with that forever and be far. And that goes back to that cancer nursing kind of thing where when you're dealing with someone on their deathbed, the biggest thing that they will regret is not recognizing, other than, you know, shittiness with loved ones, which is a whole other piece. But in terms of personal stuff, like the biggest thing they regret is not realizing their potential in whatever it might be. So that's far bigger risk to me. It's like the risk of getting to the end of the road and being like, fuck, I left so much on the table. Like that's the biggest risk, literally the biggest risk.
Did you see people on their deathbed like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the whole family shittiness thing, like that's one of the things that I've been really firm on. It's like, I just won't deal with shitty people in my life. I just cut them out. Like if people are shitty generally and in an ongoing basis, I just refuse to deal with them. It's like I have a pretty strict line where it's like, if you're going to be shitty, I'm just going to fucking...
Yeah, you're not serving me, you're not helping me.
Not serving me at all. Like if you've got personal issues and there's a problem there, I'll help you through it. Absolutely. But if you're just being shitty for the sake of being shitty, no.
We don't need that noise.
We don't need that. But no, definitely seeing people where they're at that end of the road point and it's like they know that they don't have very long left. It's like there will often be regrets around things that they didn't do. Like you'd never talk to someone that'd be like, oh, geez, I regret doing this, this, and this. Like people don't regret doing things. You regret not doing things. So
I guess you just got to choose your regret.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what
you're always
you do,
going to regret something.
Yeah. Because if you go through this door, you don't go through that door. There's always,
Totally.
But I think you've got to come up with, you've got to know yourself enough to go, what regrets can I live with and what can I not live with?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the other part of it is like you don't want to completely burn yourself out trying to get to a goal that's too far away. Like there's something in the middle there where like you've got to just keep building and building and building. But I think to me, there's nothing worse than not realizing the potential that you had to do whatever you really believe and strongly want to do. Like
you just really don't want to die knowing, hey, or not knowing.
Not knowing, or just regretting not taking the chance.
Yeah, not doing the jump when you,
Totally. You just got to jump. Like you get to a point and you're like, I've got a good plan. I believe in everything I've put together. Everyone else might not believe it. And sometimes, you do have to listen. But you get to a point and you're like, I'm just going to do it. And that's back to that no plan B thing. Not having the safety net will give you the momentum you need and the drive you need to make it work. It's like we got to quite a few points with COVID and floods and fires and everything else where nothing's working. You got no money and you're like, what the fuck do I do? But you're at this point now. There is no turning back.
Yeah, the boats are on fire.
The boats are on fire. Like there is no way home. Like you either just fucking bunker down and give up or you just find a way through. There's always a way through. Like I guess at some point you got to give up, but
no, like I said, you'll find a way if you really believe it.
Yeah.
If you would just say you were to die tomorrow, would you have a big regret that you haven't done something yet?
No, I don't think so. To me, it's, to be honest, spending more time with my kids is what it would come down to, but because they're everything to me. But in terms of, no, I haven't left much on the table. Like honestly, no.
It's a pretty freeing feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it
when
is.
When you have
absolutely.
that feeling, you're like, if it was all to go tits up tomorrow, I'm happy. I'm content. I've done a fair bit.
I've done a fair bit. And that's the thing. It's like I've actually done a fair bit. Like objectively, it's not arrogance. It's like I've done a fair bit through hard work and determination and sheer will most of the time. But yeah, you log a few miles and do a few things. And I don't know, like there's still lots I want to do, obviously. And we've got other bike parks we're building and other things we want to do. Like so much more to offer. But I wouldn't get to a point where I was like, fuck, I've just left all these opportunities on the table. Like that's not the way I operate.
Yeah, you're not stacking them all up.
No, I mean, there's lots of things you want to do and you have to prioritize and you get to a point where there's more opportunities than time to do them. So you've always got to leave some things and just move on. Yeah. But that's a good problem to have at the end of the day. And that's not leaving things on the table. It's just knowing that you've got a limited time and bandwidth and you've got to focus on something. Otherwise, you're just going to fucking spin out.
Yeah, no, I get you. If just say you were to die tomorrow and you're happy, you've done everything.
We're getting morbid.
I always ask people this.
No, it's good.
How do you want to be remembered if you did go out?
Yeah, to be honest, I think as much as anything, it would be someone that didn't leave anything on the table. And I think from people who are close to me, and there's not that many people, but they would hopefully believe that already. And someone who cared and supported and gave 110% to everything, which I do. Like I'm not the kind of person that just fucks around on the sidelines. Like once I commit to something, I do it. But yeah, just someone that's been hardworking and supportive of their friends and family. And
are you someone that if you say you're going to do something, you've got to do it, even if it's almost at your detriment to keep continuing chasing that thing?
Sometimes. I mean, you get pretty good at changing course. Like we've changed course on lots of different things over the years with business and other things in life. But yeah, I'm not afraid of what people think of me. So in the sense of like people judging you, like we live a pretty different kind of life. Like we have a house up here, we have a house in Hobart, a house at Maydena. We move the kids around. Some people are judgmental of that. Our kids are amazing. They love it. We move them around schools a bit. We're going to do a bit more time up here. We're going to try and get an apartment in Whistler and spend some time over there every year. Like we don't do things normally. And like people judge, like schools judge, parents judge. People will always have an opinion on you, but I just don't give a fuck anymore. And I think from that point of view, it's pretty freeing. Like not worrying what people think allows you to be a lot more, flexible and
just be authentic to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if people don't like it, again, if you're really shitty, I'll just burn you to the ground.
It doesn't matter. You just,
It's just not important. It's like the relationships that are important to me, I will cherish them and work super hard to maintain those. But the others, I just have no time for.
Yeah, just walk away at that point. It's
just
this doesn't serve me. What are you doing?
It doesn't serve me. It's not helping me. It's not helping me on my journey to achieve whatever I want to achieve. So what's the point of worrying about it? I have this conversation with a lot of people like, fuck, you must just get sick of people having a go at you over this or that. It's like, it actually doesn't bother me at all. It's really not. It's just background noise. Like occasionally it gets you down, or occasionally you use it to, like we were saying before, motivate you to push on and do something. But it's just background noise at the end of the day.
Well, it's always like, I don't know how strangers can make you so angry, because like they don't know you.
Exactly.
Your family can make you angry.
Yeah.
Your parents can make you angry. Like the people you're so close to, your brother, your sister. But that's because there's such attachment to that person.
Well, you respect their opinion, right? But it's like some rando on the street that doesn't like the way you did something, or doesn't like some bike park that you built somewhere else. I'm like, I mean, that's valid. I'll take the feedback in that situation, but some people are just shitty.
Yeah.
Just like,
you're saying this sucks. You're like, why?
Yeah. Or like, okay, your opinion, that's fine. Cool. Like no problem at all. You're entitled to that. It's all good. And there's always people like that.
But they won't give you constructive criticism. They'll just say, this sucks. And you go, okay, well, how do we make it better? How do we work on this? And it's like, nah, you don't get that information.
Or I think too, like a lot of people don't understand the context. Like it's really easy to stand on the sidelines and have an opinion, but unless you've actually been involved in a process, like you've no idea why decisions were made the way they were made when it comes to anything. I mean, it's the same with that whole ESO Warner Brothers thing. Like unless you have some visibility of why they've done the things they've done, you don't really know why. Like we can definitely pick at the communication, because that is something they can genuinely improve at. But in terms of the broader way they've done things, like we don't know why they made those decisions. It'd be nice if they told us a little bit more. But
that's the thing, because I was a bit worried with doing all this and the Eddie thing. I was like, I don't want to get so loud because I don't know. So I was just getting loud about not knowing. And that's a real thing that should have been done. That was, again, my big thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to come on here and just go, this is wrong and that's wrong, because I see that from so many different angles through the sport. I'm like, that's not
And come with solutions too. Like people that are just, throwing shit against the wall from the sidelines is not helpful.
Yeah.
But if you can like, hey, from my perspective, it would be amazing if you could do this, this, and this. That would make a massive difference. And then they've at least got something. Like we get it all the time. Like people will come and have feedback. Like generally our feedback's like 99.9% amazing. Occasionally we get something constructive. It's like really helpful. It's like, hey, I was with you guys today and this, and this didn't quite line up. And if you'd done this a little bit differently, then this would work. And it's like, that's awesome. Like have a free uplift, great feedback. We'll take that on board and do something with it. Like I think having that is awesome, but just being like, this sucked. It's like,
what do you do with that? You don't do
I can't do anything with that.
Yeah,
it's not helpful at all.
I just can't come up with this idea while you were talking about that. It's like, why didn't they give, just say the World Cup, for example, every rider, when you go get your number plate, there's a QR code, you scan it and you fill out a little survey. What would you like to see at this event, more events, whatever. And then you can either fill it out then or after the race, or do two.
Yeah,
or just
like one after the race. It's like,
what was good, what was
bad.
Yeah,
exactly. How can we improve? Any comment? Easy.
And then it's like, you have a voice then.
Yeah.
You have somewhere to throw your energy, not just like, this event sucked. You're like, okay, why?
And I do wonder, and I don't know, but I do wonder if some of it was just that they needed to move so quickly that taking on too much feedback was just going to slow them down. Because obviously they didn't have long, like now they've got more time, but at the start, it's like we suddenly have to organise a whole World Cup from scratch. And we've got to build this team. And I know talking to Chris, he's like, all we're doing is just hire like 100 and something staff in a couple of weeks. So I know that there was a whole lot of shit going on. And look, that's probably part of it. But yeah, moving forward, that communication piece is, I think, key.
Yeah, it felt like it was almost a bit rushed at the beginning when they were getting it off the ground. And
look, to be honest, that's where I think we can maybe try and influence a little bit with like the way we treat athletes at Hardline and the way we manage athletes at Hardline and the way we treat them and manage them at the World Cups that we have. Like hopefully we're sort of slowly influencing a little bit of that, again, from the sidelines. But I know we had an influence over the guys, the Warner Brothers guys, when we hosted the World Cup. Like a bunch of our ideas were things that they're now using, across the series and things. So you can make change from the sidelines. You just have to persist.
Well, that's the thing. If you do something so good, so bright, so loud, so amazing, people are going to
pay attention.
Come. Yeah, they pay attention. They come. They see it.
Yeah,
and people realize that.
And we're
wanna
just like,
invest in
look, we're
that.
not doing it to try and be cool. Like, we're doing it because we give a fuck about the sport and we want to make it better. And if some of these ideas that we're engaging with and developing to make it better make it beyond us, cool. I don't want credit for any of that. I don't give two shits. Just make it better. Like, it's not about us or even Maydena, the venue, anything else. Like, let's just make the sport better. And I think these small things and focusing on the event and the community and the athletes, like, we need to get back to the core of that a bit more.
I think it's doing your best. Pretty much is just like, how good can this be done? I want to do my best. Like you say, it's not trying to be
that's the
cool.
other
You just
thing
want to
too.
make
Like,
it.
If you're doing your best, people will generally
They'll see
be
it.
happy
And they'll
because
see
they
it,
know
yeah.
that you're doing your best. It's only when you're doing your best and you're still miles away from where you need to be,
Yeah.
you're battling along and nothing's happening, then they're going to be shitty. But if you're like nearly there and they're having a good time, but they can see that you're working your ring out at the event, like racing around, doing everything, actually giving a shit about them, people are pretty happy then. They really
I think
genuinely are.
Yeah, if you can see it, if you can see there's effort getting put
Yeah.
in, I think that was again, coming back to this year, it's not that you don't see effort, you just don't see, like, there's no face to it.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. It was like Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Like, who is Warner Brothers? Like, yeah, there's people that work for Warner Brothers, but
Yeah.
who do we go to? Who do we talk to? Who's our point of contact?
That's where I think that athlete liaison person would be amazing. Like, Red Bull have someone like that. And we will be working with them at Hardline to really have that dialogue with the athletes. Again, a little easier because it's smaller.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with the factory teams and all that kind of thing. But if you want to go smaller anyway for the World Cup, you got to get better at it. Like, you need to be more engaging with your athletes and consultative rather than just like this top down, this is the way we're doing things. But if that doesn't work for the athletes, at some point they will go somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
I know that's a huge other thing, and look at golf, and like, eventually if you really burn out the athletes, something else will happen.
Yeah, they're going to go.
Yeah.
They won't want to do it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I fully see that. And I see as well, when you say those bigger teams, like the team managers have their own agenda that's separate to the riders.
Yeah.
And that is something that we dealt with, because you've got a team manager that goes and speaks. They're not speaking for you, they're speaking for the team.
Yeah, exactly. And
like,
they have
you
a
are
whole
part-
different range of incentives.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
You're a part of the team, but
Yep.
they're speaking for the team. So
Yep.
it's like what you want gets lost in translation at some point. In
Yeah.
That. So that's another factor where if you go to Hardline, you're just going straight to the athlete.
Yeah,
Cut out the
exactly.
middleman.
You have that direct dialogue. Like, we'll be doing twice a day athlete meetings, running through everything for the day, like weather and practice and logistics and how are we doing? Like, what do you need? How's the food? Is the accommodation all right? Like, that, to me, that's important. Like, they are the reason there is Red Bull Hardline. Like, it's not the course, it's not the venue, it's not me, it's not our staff, it's the athletes. Like, they're the core of all of it. And if we nail that bit and then build the event around it, like, you've got it. Like,
That's, man, it's like, again, so simple. So
not
like,
that
keep
hard.
the athlete happy.
Yeah.
Imagine if, and this is blowing this out of proportion, but at the same time, it's kind of not. Okay, you got a rock band. Just say you got AC/DC that's flying in. The promoter doesn't pick them up from the airport, doesn't give them a room to prepare in, doesn't give them anything, and then they just go up and play in front of thousands of people.
do you think you're going to get a good show?
No,
Not their best.
No,
that's
they're
for
going to be
sure.
pissed. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, "Where's our?" For example, when we warm up, they put up a like 20 by 20 easy ups with like a roof that always blows away, and I'm like, like, "What do you mean?" Like, it's just
Yeah.
something as simple as that. You don't even give a shade
Yeah.
to warm up. There's
Yeah.
one porta potty, stuff like that,
Yep.
and it wears on you, man.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, it
it's a
would.
massive reason that.
Yeah.
Not a massive reason, but it is a reason. It's like,
And I think the other part of that too is like, and I don't know, I'm assuming that's been happening for a while. It's like, if you were seeing gradual improvement, people would probably be okay about it. They'd
Yeah,
be like,
it's just not.
oh, well, they're getting better. They've got 2 porta potties. And you're like, oh, it's not enough yet. Like, well, then next time we get 3. Hey, we really need 4. Like, if there's that gradual iterative improvement, people are generally pretty happy. Like, they don't expect everyone to be at their best straight away. And I think that's the same with that whole Warner Brothers deal. It's like, look, you guys did some really cool stuff. You did some stuff that hasn't worked, semis, other bits and pieces. But like, as long as you're willing to keep working and improving, that's fine. But if you still got one porta potty in a shitty tent after 10 years, like, no one's going to be happy.
yeah,
And stuff does matter.
yeah, you need to improve at least visually a little bit.
Yeah, like,
here
or
and
just be showing that you're trying to improve.
Mm.
I think that's one of the big things. It's like, just get better incrementally and people will be happy. They're not expecting you, when some people are, but they don't expect you perfect, best self, best event at round 1.
Yeah.
Like, I was at Lenzerheide. It was a pretty fucking good event from a spectator point of view. Massive crowds, village was great. last drop, as we were saying earlier, was kind of janky, and I spoke to them about that, and that's where Win ate shit. But it was a cool event. Like the broadcast was massive. Commentating a bit weird, but broadcasting great.
And I've heard that the numbers are getting quite
they
big
are.
now.
Yeah, they really are by the sound of things.
So,
like talking to Carlso and the crew about it, like they're getting the numbers. And that's, look, I hope they do, because if they can sell the broadcast, reduce the cost for some of the venues that are paying for a lot of the broadcast, you're going to get better venues at the end of the day. Look, it's very hard to justify a multi-million-dollar spend on a World Cup or two as a marketing exercise. Like, you can do a hell of a lot for a couple of $1 million other than a World Cup. Like, if you're comparing the two, and that's why places like, what does Whistler need a World Cup for? They don't need the marketing. They're not going to go and get a World Cup.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
But then all the purists are like, we need to go.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be.
That $11.99 course looked sick. It's pretty mental, and it definitely smoked a few juniors, but it was cool.
Yeah.
Like, from an elite athlete point of view, it looked really cool. But they won't have a World Cup, I don't think. It's just not.
Well, it comes back to why.
Why? They don't need it. Like, they're busy anyway.
Yeah, we're busy, and then we can do it all ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't want someone to come and tell us what to do. Say we're doing something wrong where we don't even really want you here anyway.
Yeah. It's like
what's the incentive?
Talking about whether we'd host a national series round. It's like, we don't need a national series round. Why would we? Like, it's just working with Oz Cycling. Sorry, Oz Cycling, but you are painful to work with for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need it.
Yeah. But then everyone comes to you and they go, oh, come on, we need to do this. I'm like,
no, we don't.
yeah, but they think that just
yeah, and it's even the World Cup thing. Like, we've almost gone full circle, but I still want to do it because I'm a racing purist, and like, my heart's in it for the racing. But we don't really need a World Cup now. Like, Hardline's amazing. We've got that for several years. Like, arguably World Cup, we don't really need it. I still want to do it because I feel like we've got something to offer as a venue, and a unique take and a unique event delivery that I think will hopefully influence the sport a little bit. But we don't need a World Cup. Definitely not.
If you were to go back and do this from the start, like, you just brought the bike park and you've got it, and you could go back and change something to get to the whole you're about to host a World Cup, what would you do differently going from that point to now?
Oh, that's a good question. To be honest, not a lot. Like, nothing macro. There's obviously like small things that you would change and do differently, and we've made heaps of mistakes. But if we hadn't made those mistakes, we wouldn't have learned, and we wouldn't have got to where we are today and where we'll be in 10 years' time. So honestly, no regrets. Definitely no regrets.
Was there something harder that you didn't expect? And then again, was there something easier that you also didn't expect?
I think it's been really hard for sure. Has it been harder than I expected?
Or just it was a certain thing that happened that you're like, oh, I thought that was going to be a lot easier. And then
Well,
vice
I thought
versa.
it would be hard at the start. I thought like the first couple of years would be hard, and then I'd be able to just kind of sit back and enjoy it. That hasn't really happened. It's just been hard every fucking year. But in saying that, like, it's a good hard. Like, you get burnt out sometimes, but it's a good hard. So no, nothing. I mean, the approvals process for us was really hard. And to be honest, like, we're working on a park in Sydney, just north of Sydney, and a park up here on the sunny coast, which you touched on earlier. The approvals framework to get mountain bike trails in a commercial setting built is a nightmare. Like, it's almost impossible now anywhere in Australia to do that. We're quite lucky in Maydena, and one of the reasons we got Hardline is because we can build the big jumps that other people just can't do. They can't get the approvals to do anything that crazy. So that's going to be hard, and it sucks for the sport, because if we could build, like, we want 3 or 4 bike parks in Australia that can operate as one kind of cohesive whole. You can get a season pass, you can do the whole lot, but getting the approvals is impossible. So that's harder than, maybe not harder than I thought, but harder than I hoped. In terms of easier, yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't think it would be that easy to get Hardline. That's for sure. It was really goddamn hard, but, and you know, spent already hundreds of hours on just Hardline and securing Hardline. But I think that the reputation we'd built in terms of our event delivery and venue and everything else, we were in a pretty good place. Like, it wasn't a hard sell. People knew that we were a good place to do it. It's just actually turning that, you know, belief in the venue to Hardline as an event. That's the hard bit. But convincing people that we were the right place to do it actually wasn't that hard. So that was probably easy. But now the hard work and the fun begins, I suppose.
I was going to say, because you obviously have to have such a solid team of people around you. You've had pretty much the same team since you've kind of come up and started. Maydena's
been pretty similar. Yeah, a few people have kind of moved on and done their own things and different things. But the core team stayed pretty similar. We've lost a couple over the last year or so. Who've our head mechanic went over to Bike Park Wales, which was awesome. Like, I know the Bike Park Wales guys really well, so I kind of helped facilitate him getting a look in over there and moving over there. So that kind of thing's awesome. Look, we miss Luke, but being able to work with him to take the next step and go and work somewhere else and have new horizons over there is really cool. So that's not a sad thing. It's a positive thing.
Just change, yeah.
Yeah, but no, Reese has been around since day one. I know you know Reese. He's amazing. Like, he's great for helping set the tone around the bike park and kind of building that culture. I'm sort of more of a background player. I just kind of put my head down and stay in the background as much as I can. But yeah, he's awesome for that side of things. So,
because what would his role be?
He's general manager, which is probably pretty fair. Like, he manages all kinds of shit. And I'm very much behind the scenes kind of helping with decision making and marketing, and he's really, we call him ops guy. Like, my shortcut for him is ops guy. Like, I'm kind of the dreamer, and he's the guy that kind of packages that up into some kind of context that works. Like, some of my ideas are a bit fucking wild.
I was going to say, how's the relationship go with you two when you come at him with something that's probably pretty out there and he's just...
Yeah, we're pretty good. Like, we had a whole bunch of biffo over the whole Hardline event thing, and like, he wanted to do just Hardline and just do the race, and I was like, no, we need to do more. And then I kind of built this whole fucking massive festival program out, and he's like, nah, it's too much. Like, you need to focus. So we kind of whittled it down, and then we argued for a couple of days over the last few bits and pieces, and then he kind of came around. But
he's like a bit more of the realist that comes into play, where you're like,
a little bit. He's like, you don't really need all of that. I'm like, yeah, but I need some of it. Like,
I want it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, go for year two. So no, it is good to, like, I kind of shoot a little high sometimes, so it is nice to.
That's good. I feel like that's good.
It's
though.
a great relationship.
You'd rather shoot higher than lower,
and he shoots high too. Don't get me wrong, but I'm kind of like over the fucking moon, and he's like, okay, just a little bit back from there is probably where we need to be.
Tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the actual plan up here with the sunny coast, and then in Sydney? What do you want to build?
Yeah, so we're chipping away. Both of them are different to Maydena. They're smaller elevation, as you know, just don't have the big hills. So I think Maydena will always be kind of the jewel in our crown, but what we're trying to do is build out a little ecosystem of bike parks in the Southern Hemisphere. We are looking at a couple around the US, but mainly here. So ideally, we'd want one in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, possibly in Adelaide, and then obviously the park in Tassie. And then we are starting to look at something over in NZ, South Island. So I guess we just want to be able to take what we've learned with Maydena, bring in some outside investment this time, not do it all ourselves. Wouldn't do that again in a rush. And look, I guess Maydena is the test mule in some ways, like, because we own it and we can fuck around with it. It's a prototype. We can do all kinds of dumb things, and the consequences are, we don't have to deal with the fallout of investors and things. So yeah, we want to do that. I feel like there's a really cool space to be able to have a range of different parks that we operate. Queensland I'd love, because I hate Maydena in winter. We try and get out of there as much as we can. So having one up here would be epic, and something near Sydney. I just feel for anyone that lives in Sydney, the public riding, sorry, Sydney kind of sucks.
They don't have really anything.
They don't have anything. Yeah, there's lots of cool gorilla trail, but if you want to actually ride anything official, and we've built some of it, so don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing other people. There's just not enough, and there's not enough diversity, and Sydney mountain biking publicly sucks. So we want to try and change that and bring a whole new style of riding in with that park. So we're chipping away, still building that one. And the one up here is just a bit of a slow burn, to be honest. Like, yeah, but that is the plan. Next couple of years, get those parks online, and then have the three. And then, as I say, looking at probably New Zealand next. Because again, there's a really cool space, I think, in Queenstown where you've got Skyline, but Skyline really doesn't like mountain biking, and there's no desire from that company to really do anything with mountain biking. They just kind of keep it online as a poor cousin, and it's never going to get any of their attention, investment, infrastructure, anything. So that's sort of a dead end, I think. Skyline's cool, but there's no point trying to push that too much further from our perspective. It's like we tossed around ideas of like, can we try and approach these guys and see if they'd be willing to bring us in to operate and develop and whatever else, but I don't think it's the right fit. So I think we need a ground up build over there that's a little bit out of the alpine and doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, you kind of have your own flavour to it.
Yeah, so early days, very, very early days, but we are keen to do something over there, definitely. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then we can syndicate the events, like Enduro Jam can be a Southern Hemisphere series, and there's that whole kind of ecosystem you can build, and the staff can move around between parks. Like, they don't have that seasonality with Maydena. Like
Yeah, like
our revenue kind of like this across the year gets to flatten out a little bit more. So it makes life just generally easier. We can bring in a bigger team. So I'm not doing marketing anymore. I can bring in a marketing manager and I can bring in other people to help with stuff. Like you get a bigger organization, you can spread that workload out a little bit more.
Not get caught up so much in just the things you actually don't want to do and start going to new places, new locations, building something again, being that creative person. Like
that's it. And look, we're working with a bunch of other people, like Whit Sundays. We're doing a bunch of work with them and their cable car project behind Airlie to look at doing a bike park up there. So there's a heap of things like that going on, which are really exciting as well. And if that comes online, we'll probably end up operating that one for them too. So
just fingers in all pies.
It's all fun.
I was going to say, once, like you said, it's one of those things that snowballs into something else and something else and just keeps building and going bigger.
Keeps on going. Yeah, it's cool though.
All right, I'm going to let you go. But before we go, I always ask, I've actually asked questions as we were going, but normally I ask them at the very end. But I haven't asked one yet. What are you scared of?
Yeah, I think pretty clear on that one. Just not reaching my potential. That's the biggest thing. Like we said, I don't want to die tomorrow, but if I did, I feel like I've done a fair bit, but I just don't want to leave anything on the table. And probably underneath that is just letting my kids down, because I'm super close to my kids and I want to give them the absolute best opportunity and experiences I can. So they're probably the two things. But yeah, not reaching potential is terrifying for me. Like just leaving.
The regret at the end.
Just regret, yeah. And that comes right back to that nursing career and kind of dealing with all of that sort of space. It's like that is, what I saw, other than familial kind of blow-ups with people arguing with their kids while they were dying. Like that's all just a no-brainer. But other than that, like just leaving too many things unexplored, or, just leaving stuff on the table that you should do and you just don't have I don't know, you're scared. Yeah. Too scared to take the risk to pursue it. It's like, just fucking do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You'll fail. Yeah. People will judge you. Who cares? If they're judging you and they're being shitty about it, you don't need to care about it.
They don't know you.
They don't know you. They're not important. Like, their opinion means nothing. If they don't know you, their opinion means absolutely nothing. So you got nothing to worry about.
Do you find we kind of hide death a lot in our culture? Like, you just don't accept it and it's just not there. It's like, go in a home, slowly die. You don't see them die, coffin, gone.
Yeah, we do. And I think we should probably talk about it a bit more. Definitely, well, not even talk about it, but recognize that it's a part of life. Yeah. And understanding that, we could get hit. I could fucking get plowed down by a bus on my way out here today. You just never know. And it's like you have no control over that. But it's still like everyone dies. So at some point we need to think about it and recognize it. And
the one thing we all know we don't talk about, it's like how we know that.
Yeah, I guess it's scary, right? Like it's really scary. But at the end of the day, it's going to come for all of us at some point.
I guess it's hard. I always quiz people on this because like you say it's scary, but it's like you don't know. It's like the whole cat in the box thing.
Yeah,
like you don't know if it's dead or
not. It might be really rad.
It might be. You might just like fade into like some cloud and then go, I'm present, but I'm not in pain.
Yeah.
You just, again, you
don't know.
You don't have any idea. But
what can you do about it anyway? Like totally out of your control. It's like going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That might be the same. I was going to ask you, what's a question that you never get asked, but you really want to get asked? Is it like a thing that no one ever asks you that if you were to get asked, you're like, I've got a good answer for that?
I don't know. I feel like we've covered a fair bit of ground. Nothing really comes to mind.
That's probably a good thing. I probably did a good job.
Yeah, no, you've done a good job.
Something doesn't jump out.
You've done a good job.
Because I know sometimes I'll have people come and like interview me or ask me stuff, and you're like, why don't you ask me about that? But
no, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, no, we've covered some pretty good ground. I mean, a lot of people just don't go very deep, so it's nice to scratch the surface a little bit more.
Yeah.
No, I think you've done well.
The whole caring for cancer patients, that's like super fascinating to me because I find those points when you're like in that state, and I can't fully compare, but when I was obviously on the ground and I thought about those things, like everything that I was about to lose, and it's not like I've got regret, but I know there's so much more to life that I want to do. And I was thinking about all the things that I couldn't do in that moment. I guess that's when you actually are on your deathbed, that's what's real. It's a reality. It's like there's no, like, obviously I'm getting a lot better and I've got a second chance, but for deathbed people, it's like,
totally.
This is it.
Yep.
But I just find that so fascinating that you were with so many of those people. I guess that's obviously somehow crafted to who you are today.
It's a powerful thing. I mean, it's upsetting at the time for sure, and difficult. And like I was pretty good at compartmentalizing and kind of leaving that at work and trying to move on. But it's hard. Yeah, it's really hard. But it does set that, I don't know, really unique view of the world where you just don't. Firstly, you don't care too much about what people think of you, because at the end of the day, we all die. It doesn't matter that much. But secondly, like just not leaving anything on the table, I think for me is super important. It's like, don't stop short just because you were too scared to shoot a little bit further.
Yeah. Was there a particular person that you cared for before they left that kind of left a profound impact?
Yeah, there were several. There was definitely one where there was a whole lot of angst between the mum and the son, and there was a whole story around it. But anyway, she was really bitter to him right up to the end. And I remember a conversation I had with her like the night he died, and I'd worked all day. So I ended up doing an 18-hour shift. So I was fucking tired, and I'd stayed deliberately because I knew he was going to die, and I wanted his care to be consistent and all that sort of stuff. So I had a conversation with her, and it got quite heated. And I just said, like, you know, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life, basically. And I explained to her what was happening and that he wasn't going to make it through the night. And like, this was her last chance to make amends. And she walked away. And I remember that like really clearly. She actually lodged a complaint against me at the hospital, and it was a whole thing. But it was like she just walked away from it. Like, she had this one chance to kind of go back to her son and, you know, try and fix the issues that they were having, which was to do with she just didn't like the guy's partner. Like, it was all bullshit at the end of the day, meaningless. But instead of fixing that, and I was like super clear, I was like, he's not going to make it. This is your last chance. And she just walked away. And I think for that, that one always stuck with me. I was tired and I was emotional, and I was like, never be that person. Like, that's just literally the worst thing you could possibly do in that situation, is just turn your back on someone when they're dying. And he just died alone. Like, I mean, I sat with him, but she just walked away. It was, yeah, horrible, but powerful in another way. So yeah, there was a few like that, and a few that I was quite close to, younger people and things, that definitely sort of reset your framework around things and the way you think about things. But yeah, very interesting time, and I took a lot from it.
Yeah, that's a heavy experience and then she's got to carry that around with her forever.
And that's what I said to her.
Forever.
And I said to her, look, I've sat here with over 100 people at that point while they've died, and I've dealt with all this, and you will never, and this is why she put in a complaint about me. I was like, you will never forgive yourself for this. Like, I'm being really firm with you because you need to understand that this will haunt you forever. And yeah, she just walked away. But yeah, it's pretty rough.
Man.
Yeah, very rough.
Man. How do you carry that anger, and then the person's dead?
That's
it's
it, right?
They're dead. They're gone. You're not.
Yeah.
Who are you angry at now?
You're not even
what are
saying
you angry
goodbye.
At? Yeah.
And it's your son. Like, I mean, you don't have kids. I got kids, but I can't imagine being in that situation where you would walk away from your son. So.
Well, I guess roles reverse, like a parent. Like, I can't imagine, no matter how angry. Like, I remember even me and my mum would fight. Yeah. And whenever we would fight, before I would leave, I would give her a hug.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I'm so close to my kids. I'm like, no matter how much you've fucked up, I will always give you a hug. Like, there is no boundary between like you being an absolute little asshole, but you can always come and cry and have a cuddle. Like, I think part of that sets the framework for how I, you know, my relationship with my kids. So it all, you know, it's all part of building you. It's horrible at the time, but it really does give you that perspective where you're like, I would never, you know, do anything even remotely close to that to my kids. It's
such a tricky thing, because I always think about this if I was to ever have kids, and I'm like, you want them to struggle, but not enough that become like traumatized and bitter, just enough that they become really good, strong-willed, happy people. And that balance is, I don't know how to.
Oh, it's so hard. And we think about it all the time, because like our kids are relatively privileged. Like, we've worked hard. We've got, you know, our houses are pretty average, but they're in nice places. Kids have great bikes. They have basically anything they want from a sporting, like, we support anything they want to do. Like, we don't buy them a whole bunch of shit, but like, if you want a nice bike and you're riding really well, we'll buy you a nice bike. Like, they have lots of stuff. And I'd never had that. Like, I had shitty bikes and I struggled for everything and I worked hard. And it's like, how do you instill some of that battler mentality into your kids when, like, we're not fucking super rich or anything, but it does still make you
don't
think.
Have to say no as much as other people would
exactly.
Have to say no.
Like, we travel heaps and the kids have opportunities a lot of their friends don't have. And how do you still, you know, take them back to the core of like, you need to struggle sometimes. Yeah, it's a hard one.
I
Really
guess
is.
I know. I always like the concept, meet me halfway. Like you
Yeah.
want to buy a bike,
Yep.
meet me halfway.
Yep.
Do some work, or like show initiative into what are you bringing to the table, not
Yep.
what do you want me to bring to the table.
No, it's true. And I'm making Max work for his motorbike that he wants.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can buy it for him, but I'm not going to.
It's the
like you
same
have
with
to earn it.
it's same with kids, man. Kids always hit me up. Oh, can I get a jersey? Can I get this? And I'm like, you need to bring something to the table.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I wrote you this letter about how much
I drew you a picture.
Yeah,
or,
be my friend.
yeah,
Something, man.
Yeah.
Like, show some effort. It doesn't have to be much.
Yeah.
Like, when you just ask for something, it's like you're trying to take something from me, no matter how big or small that may be. I'm going to put up resistance.
Yeah.
You give me something that instantly opens me up to, you're giving.
It's true.
You're
So, Max, my little guy, wants I won't mention the brand, but because he's going to approach them himself, wants to try and get a sponsorship for a frame.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've talked him through it, and I was like, you need to draw them a picture. Like, it needs to be you riding at Maydena on their frame. You need to do it all branded up and like in your Darko clothing and everything else that he rides for. And then you need to write them a letter, and I'm going to help you. And you're going to handwrite it, and then I'll type one out. So we're going to send them this big package of stuff, and he's drawn it all up for them with his own logos and everything else. And I mean, that's cool.
It goes so far, man.
Yeah.
It goes so much further than
just
he
going,
would ever
hey, give me a bike. It's like,
Yeah.
we don't need anyone to give him a bike. He just wants that. Like,
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
But that's cool. Again, it's being creative. It's showing you putting in work, effort, time to get the thing you want.
Yeah, and trying to teach him to think outside the box. That's the other
Yeah.
thing. It's like, don't just be the guy that sends an email saying, hey, I got first at this race. I want a frame.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. That feels shitty to me. Like, we get a bunch of people wanting to do stuff with us, kids and things, and you can't work with all of them. Like, we have a really strong ambassador program, and we support them all financially and help them out with training and coaching and everything. But you're still saying no to a lot of people. It's the people that are actually out there doing cool shit and being good people in the community that we want to work with.
Or how you stand out. People are scared, man. People are real scared. Even in 2021, I'm not going to say his name, but like a pro racer that I looked up to came up to me and he's like, oh, I wish I could be more out there. Someone was doing the hair and shit. Just doing stupid shit. And he came up to me. I was like, I was like, you can, man. It's not hard. Like, I'm dyeing my hair and just saying a bit more shit on the internet. Like, it's not. And this was someone I looked up to, which was just like, that's a weird dynamic shift in a way. Like, in a strange but kind of fun way.
But it's important too. Like, you got to feel that you can be authentic. Otherwise, it's not a great situation to be in, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess coming back to, talking about Annie before, like, she's someone that's so authentic and I'm doing my shit. And it's like you create this aura around you.
Yeah.
Like, I know I met her hanging off a bike rack going from Derby up to the Stoke Wizards house, and we're just literally swinging off this bike rack going up. And when you see someone, like, you have like an aura. Like, you have
there's
a really,
energy.
It's like you want to help and you want to do good, and you can feel it in people straight away.
And that's what I've said to her a few times. It's like she was having sort of debates around friends and people and different things. And I was like, the right people are going to find you, and you'll know who they are at some point. Like, it's going to be very fucking obvious, and you just need to have a think about the people that are latching onto you because they want you to take them along for the ride, and the people that are actually drawn to you because they want to help and support you and be part of the ride. That's a different mentality. Like, there'll always be people trying to hang off you when you're on your upward trajectory, but having the right people there is really important, and you know who they are. Like, it's obvious.
There's no motives behind it.
Totally.
Like, oh, I'm gonna get the because people love, man, they love getting the shine or the rub.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I'm hanging out with this person, I'll get a bit of their rub, and it'll lift me up in a social or whatever it is. And you're like, that's not.
And we get that. Look, the number of people that have reached out to me wanting to get involved in the Hardline project, build, athlete roster, everything else. And some of them are people that have been pretty shitty with me in the past and just been crappy people. And I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, do you actually think that I'm just going to bring you in when we've got something cool happening? Like, no. Like, I'm not going to sit there in the group of like Warner and the crew talking about the athlete list and put you forward because you've been shit. Like, yeah, it does count. Like, being a decent person all the way along will get you far. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, people notice. It's not like, oh, okay, you're a good person today, you're a shit person
and that's
tomorrow.
not holding a grudge. It's just that, like,
reality.
In that particular situation, I've got 50 people that want to be involved in the Hardline build and 10 spots. So I'm going to pick the top 10. And there's 30 riders, and we've got 60
get a run through
that
the
want to do it. No, we're not.
You know who you are.
Probably. But it's funny. Like, you get heaps of it. It's like, okay, where were you like 5 years ago when, you were being shitty about something?
Yeah, people don't forget things. Like
No.
and it's not like you said, it's not in a spiteful, angry
No,
way.
it's not
but
a grudge. It's just like if you've only got a limited capacity to bring people along for the ride, like I want the best people on the ride at the end of the day. And if you've been shitty and you're still being shitty, like I'm not going to bring you on board. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't
what's
work
the
like
point?
that. Yeah.
I'll ask you one more.
Yeah.
One more question before we go. I really need to go to the bathroom. Load up. Before we go, I was going to ask you who is going to be. Well, I got a 2-part question. Who's going to be like the test rider for Hardline and like the kind of head builder?
Yeah, so Darcy Coots is our lead in the construction space. So Darcy's obviously raced World Cup, as you'd know. Strong jumper and, solid guy. So he's been building trails for us for forever. So Darcy is keen to test, and I've said to him, I will support him through that process. We are going to bring in other people or another person to help in that process, just so that there's another opinion to bounce off. Like I can stand there and go, this is great. And I've worked really closely with Darcy to get all the dimensions and things dialed in, but I'm not going to jump it. So like maybe years ago I would have, but I'm not jumping it now. So my opinion's not that valid. Like it's valid because I've a lot of experience, but this is a whole other dimension of scale and things. So no, DAS with support, we'll be doing it. And we've got a whole framework around how we're going to test and when we're going to test and what infrastructure we'll have in place with airbags and other things to test in the safest possible way. So there is a whole system around that. It's not just a willy-nilly, hey, we built this today, we're going to go send it. It's like there is no testing on Hardline until it's gone through the process.
Getting to there.
But no, DAS is awesome. Building some crazy stuff there now. Really cool.
When do you think that's going to be, you can start testing top to bottom?
Yeah, January at some point is the plan. So we had Win Masters come in to a course, little sneak peek the other day. I think you noticed Winnie was down there.
Yeah,
so,
I've seen that.
Yeah, he was just having a quick look. We'll do like a full kind of course preview and testing around January. Unlike, I think Wales left it pretty late last time for various different reasons, and they were still dialing things in the week of the event. Like we want it to be ready to roll for the event, so there's not tweaking and changes during the event week if we can avoid it. But it's hard because it's so big. Like you really are pushing the absolute limit of how far you can jump a bike. So it's like, how far is too far? And is that not far enough? Like when you're pushing that close to the bleeding edge, the risk of failure is relatively high. So yeah, we're really cognizant of that and trying to make sure there's a really safe framework in place. Like we want it to be a spectacle and we want it to be huge and massive and literally the gnarliest downhill course ever. But equally, as I said earlier, like I want everyone to walk away and be happy and healthy at the end of it.
You want to just like flirt with her for a bit. You don't want to take her home.
That's it. Yeah.
Just maybe second date later on.
Buy her a drink or two.
Something like that.
Just leave her at the party.
Yeah, get out there safe.
Exactly.
What was I going to say? I was just going to ask one more thing and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, what's it like you seeing someone like Dan Booker, who's obviously come up racing there, living there, building there, come through, and obviously he got second there this year. Obviously Luke won as well, but like seeing that place create an athlete like that who's now racing and is one of the top athletes in the world. Like how is that to see that progression?
Oh, it's so cool. Honestly, that is one of the best things. Like that and seeing all the young kids just come out and ride and have fun are the two things that really motivate me to keep doing it. But yeah, that athlete progression. I mean, Dan's just such a lovely kid. I mean, you'd know him.
Oh, dude, I want to get him on here. I think he's absolutely...
Yeah, he's such a good guy and he's got a really unique perspective and he's just one of those really grounded humans that's just a lovely dude. So no, all the time in the world for Dan. And look, Sasha has done really well. It's an amazing year. So we've done what we can to try and support those guys. I helped Dan out a bunch early on, helping Sasha out over the last year, like trying to do what we can to kind of get them up there into the team structure. Like one day we'd love to have our own World Cup development team. That's my little dream, that Maydena can kind of be the training ground and we feed people up into the bigger teams. But
I'll pick some kids for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you're onto it. Yeah, but that's the aim. Like I'd love to do that. Absolutely love to do it. But no, it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's epic. It's funny to talk about Dan. Like, when you're around someone and like it kind of like Annie as well, like those people that you just know are really good people.
Yep.
And where were we? It was after the EDR and we went up to the Stoke Wizards house and I just seen Dan. And for whatever reason, I saw him and I was just like, man, you're just a really good dude. And I said something like, just being just overly nice, but he's someone that like will pull that out of you because of how he is.
Yeah.
And then what's his girlfriend's name?
Oh, Brooke.
Brooke,
Yeah.
she came kind of pulled me aside, and I almost thought she was gonna like not have a go at me, but she was like, "Can you come here for a sec?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, is everything all good?" And she was like, why did you say like all those nice things?" And I was like, "I don't know, he's just a good dude." And I just felt like saying it. And she's like, "That's really nice. That's really cool that you did that." And I hadn't thought about it, but I guess
people don't say that shit. I think that's like,
but I think people, they don't put that out there, that like Dan's someone that is just very openly himself, and because of that, he gives you the opportunity to be open to him. I think people that close off,
get it out of people.
Yeah, it's hard to go up to someone and be really open and raw with them if they're a bit shut off. And it's not that they're a bad person; they're just not as open as someone like that.
No, it's true. Yeah, it's really true. No, he's a really good dude for that. Yeah, really good dude. And we're stoked having him around the park. Builds a mean trail too. So hopefully we can get him on the hardline build a little bit.
Get him to come up.
Yeah.
Oh man, I followed him there one time and I was just like, I can't ride a bike as fast as you. Not in Maydena.
Easy too. Like
he's got everything covered.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a freak.
He's one of those people you do a clip and you're like, that felt good, and then you see him do it and you're like, I know, just like, delete mine. Just get rid of it.
Focus on Dan.
Yeah, don't worry about it. All right, Frenchie, cheers for that. Really appreciate it. Good chat. Go get some food. Easy as.
Yeah.
Oh, lock her off.
Yeah.
Thank you, mate.